Amidst the wreckage of a derailed train, an armored squad advances. One of the members reports that they have reached Beta Point, and the radar is clear, getting confirmation to proceed. They discover what they believe is the emergency exit to their target's laboratory. One member begins scanning the key. The security system doesn't respond to passwords or fingerprint authentication. Frustrated, they wonder what kind of system it is, as none of the codes work. Suddenly, the door opens on its own. A menacing, shadowy figure with glowing eyes appears in the doorway. One of the squad members is violently thrown backward. Avidia stands with a smoking gun, remarking that its output is too high. Looking at the fallen attacker, he concludes that the weapon needs further adjustments. Kneeling by the body, Avidia examines a card and confirms his suspicion that it was the cult. His communicator suddenly starts buzzing. A voice on the other end greets him as Avi and asks if he has returned to Ricto. Avidia explains that he was attacked on his way back from an investigation. The person on the line asks if he has forgotten his promise. Avidia remarks on the convenient timing, as he was just craving some of Kangashea's tea. The Mercy Pulse was history's largest recorded solar flare. Its resulting electromagnetic discharge erased all of humanity's digitized knowledge. The power of the pulse was formidable. It stripped the Earth of its color. Eventually, the human body underwent substantial mutations. In a country once known as the Far East of the world, lies its capital, the sprawling city of Ricto. A speaker preaches to a crowd, calling the Mercy Pulse a divine oracle meant to prevent humanity from regaining lost wisdom. Listening from nearby, Avidia pulls his cloak tighter and remarks on the chilly weather. Avidia approaches a tea shop, thinking the cold weather will make the tea even more enjoyable. A waitress inside trips and drops a stack of plates. A coworker scolds the newbie for the mistake, complaining that they are already busy and short on hands. The flustered waitress apologizes as Avidia kneels down near the mess. He calmly asks if she is injured. She assures him she is not and thanks him profusely for his concern. The waitress apologizes for the trouble, but Avidia tells her he doesn't mind as he is a regular customer. The condition that caused the mutations is known as the ancestor disease. The waitress explains that due to this disease, people's faces have mutated, and she offers to show him the way. Another patron calls out to Avidia, saying they'll have a cup of tea. The patron waves him over. Cavetes complains that Avidia is late, stating he has already eaten 3 pasta dishes while waiting. Avidia tells him to pay his own tab. He checks his pocket watch and insists that he is not late. Cavetes teases Avidia about his sour expression and his habit of searching for people's weaknesses. Avidia asks what the requirements are. Cavetes offers to share some information, warning it might not be worth any silver. Avidia states that he is interested, provided the information has to do with his work. The waitress arrives with his tea, apologizing for the wait. Cavetes notes the perfect timing. Avidia tells him to proceed. Cavetes urges him to speak while the tea is still hot and asks why he doesn't drink it first. Avidia takes a sip of the tea. He pauses, noticing something is wrong. Cavetes confirms the tea is bad and that Avidia, as a regular, would notice the difference in taste. Visibly dejected, Avidia declares he won't come here anymore. Cavetes explains that the girl who used to brew the tea is no longer at the establishment. He then tells Avidia to look at something. Cavetes shows Avidia a missing person poster, and Avidia asks if she went missing. Cavetes confirms that she has been gone for 2 days. Avidia processes this new information. Cavetes presents a photo of the incident, confirming it's an abduction. He explains that according to the person who took the photo, 2 men suddenly appeared. They forced her into a minivan and drove away. Avidia questions why Cavetes would come to him with an abduction case instead of going to the police. Cavetes acknowledges that would be the logical thing to do, but there's a complication. Cavetes reveals the crucial detail: the minivan belongs to the cult. He suggests they go somewhere else, and Avidia agrees. Cavetes pays the bill for his meal. As they leave, Cavetes mentions he still has 4 more plates to pay for. Avidia asks if he's sure the cult kidnapped the girl, and Cavetes replies that his information comes from a reliable source. Avidia points out it might not be true, but Cavetes clarifies he is only the messenger. Cavetes states that if the information is true, it would be a crime, and Avidia agrees the cult has crossed the line again. Cavetes adds that they don't know why the cult was after the girl. He looks out over the city, concluding that the cult must be planning something on that side. The group in question is the Iodopsy cult. They are a group that worships the lost color as their deity, striving to revive the once vivid world. With increasing followers, the cult has resorted to illegal methods and secretly restoring old technology to gain a monopoly. Avidia knows their goal is limited to color and doesn't see how the girl is connected to it. He admits that it is a worrying situation. Kvedes points out that Avidia's job is deeply entangled with the cult. This connection, he suggests, is why Avidia might be able to expose their true goal, questioning why they would kidnap a normal girl. He asks Avidia if it isn't a waste to leave this to the police. Avidia concedes that it seems like it. Avidia declares that he will expose the cult's wrongdoings and bring back the girl and her black tea. Kvedes smirks, stating that the matter is settled. The world changed drastically after the Mercy Pulse. With most technology lost, survivors could only repair and reuse what little remained. However, among the survivors, a portion of them found it. They discovered the power of colors, a new energy that could rival or even surpass past technology. This color, now a legend to the general populace, holds unlimited potential. Avidia realizes this is most likely what the cult is truly after. He realizes the cult's goal is not the world's rebirth, but to acquire this power to dominate the world. With grim determination, Avidia resolves to find this lost color before the cult can, declaring that he cannot let them have this power. The story flashes back to 2 days prior. A young woman leaves her workplace for the evening, bidding her coworker farewell. She walks home alone down a dimly lit street. Unbeknownst to her, she is being monitored from a nearby security post. Suddenly, a device is activated with a click. A pulse is unleashed, causing a massive power outage. The woman is startled by the sudden darkness, wondering what just happened. 2 shadowy figures emerge from the darkness and rush towards her. Her cry for help is cut short as she is swiftly overpowered. The narrative shifts to the present, focusing on the imposing Meisen Bridge, the sole heavily regulated throughway connecting the various districts of Ricto. Inside a vehicle, a monstrous figure named Nihm rallies his crew, announcing that their operation will begin in 30 minutes. Another member expresses disbelief at their objective, to collapse Meisen Bridge. Nihm seems undeterred. The group discusses the large sum of money they'll receive from the cult for this job. Nihm asks about the status of their captive, whom they refer to as their good luck goddess. 2 of his subordinates confirm that she is secured and not causing any trouble. In the back of the wagon, the captive girl Chai is bound and her face is hidden by a mask. She weakly questions her captors, asking what they intend to do with her. Her captors erupt in cruel laughter. They callously tell her they are just hired thugs who know nothing. They taunt her, suggesting she should look forward to their destination, the supposedly fun Hydra ward. Meanwhile, perched high above the city streets, the armored figure of Avidia watches and waits, poised to intervene. Avidia communicates with Kvedes, questioning the intel that Meisen Bridge is the target. Another operative, Yuzui, highlights the risks, noting the bridge is under heavy surveillance with over 50 cameras. Avidia adds that it's also a high-traffic area where he'd be treated as a criminal. Kvedes reassures him, saying others will handle the situation. He reveals that the cult's wagon is loaded with EMP devices. He explains that the EMP has power comparable to the Great Mercy Pulse disaster. Avidia immediately understands their plan to disable the security cameras. Avidia reveals he has confirmed that no registered vehicles are scheduled to cross the bridge, ensuring no interruptions. Kvedes laughs, impressed by his thoroughness and access to government information. Avidia notes that their illegally modified vehicle won't be able to simply waltz across. Seeing the cult's vehicle start to move, Avidia announces that he's hanging up. Kvedes wishes him luck. The screech of tires signals the beginning of the confrontation. The cultist's wagon speeds onto the bridge. Nihm gives the order to activate the EMP right as they reach the inspection point. The countdown begins. The EMP detonates. The surveillance equipment is fried. From his monitoring station, Yuzui asks for a status report. The cultists confirm that everything went perfectly according to plan. Nihm celebrates their success, convinced that by fooling the surveillance, the ball is in their court. He believes the rest of their mission will be a simple drive. Their victory is cut short as a flyer depicting their captive is suddenly slapped onto their windshield. The driver and Nihm are stunned into silence. Avidia appears on the roof of their vehicle, announcing he's looking for the girl. Enraged, Nihm demands to know who he is. Another cultist aims a weapon, boasting that they can kill him without getting caught. The cultist fires, but the bullet ricochets harmlessly off Avidia's armor. Remarking on their conviction, Avidia prepares to retaliate. He unleashes a powerful electric shock, incapacitating Jikwam. Panicking after seeing Jikwam taken down, Nihm screams at the driver to use the main engine. The driver complies, and the vehicle lurches forward with a sudden, violent burst of speed. The wagon swerves recklessly across the bridge as Nihm encourages the driver to keep going and shake their pursuer off the roof. Clinging to the roof, Avidia analyzes the vehicle's propulsion, recognizing it as a technology he's never seen before. However, he pushes his curiosity aside, knowing he doesn't have time to be impressed and must act quickly. With a powerful punch, Avidia triggers an explosion that blows out a tire. Inside, Nihm curses in shock, wondering what just happened. The vehicle careens out of control from the blown tire. It crashes through the bridge's railing and plunges towards the river below. Amidst the chaos of the crash, Avidia lands safely on the bridge, carrying the rescued Chai in his arms. Avidia checks on the disoriented girl. She doesn't know where she is or who he is. He explains that he's a regular customer at her store and introduces himself as Avidia. Their conversation is interrupted as a surviving cultist emerges from the wreckage and fires at them. Avidia quickly pushes Chai to safety, taking the brunt of the attack himself. The force of the impact causes the mask Chai was wearing to crack. As she reaches for her face, Avidia looks on, startled. The mask shatters completely. With the mask gone, her true face is revealed. She is a young woman with long, dark hair, completely untouched by the mutations that affect so many others. As Chai looks up, Avidia stares back in utter shock and disbelief. He recognizes her face, questioning if it is truly her. The towering, armored figure of Avidia looms over Chai, who is on the ground. Chai looks up with wide, fearful eyes, unable to form complete words. Dates yells at Avidia, questioning what he is doing. He warns that the power in cameras are about to come back online. Dates insists that Avidia must leave the area at once. Chai stares up in shock. Avidia stays silent, observing the situation. Avidia suddenly grabs the startled Chai. He leaps off the structure, carrying her with him. Chai screams as they fall. Avidia lands powerfully on a hard surface. The force of the landing throws Chai forward. Avidia sits with Chai on the roof of a vehicle and apologizes for his rough treatment. He tells her not to worry, as he does not intend to hurt her. He explains that it would be a bad idea to leave her with her face exposed right now. An ally's voice comes through, asking if Avidia is okay, and he replies that he managed. Avidia confirms that the girl is safe. He sets a meeting time for the next morning in front of the big screen. A news report describes a vehicle crashing into the guardrail at Meisen Bridge due to a security malfunction. The report states that investigations assume the cause was aging materials. Avidia observes that there are no reports about the kidnapping, realizing the news is being manipulated. Kavetes appears and greets Avidia. Kavetes approaches Avidia and asks how the girl is doing. Avidia explains his plan to shelter her at the laboratory, much to Kavetes' surprise. Shocked, Kavetes asks what he means by shelter. He accuses Avidia of turning into the kidnapper this time around. Avidia tells him it would be faster for him to see for himself. Kavetes asks if Avidia has learned anything from her, and Avidia replies that she was confused and tired. Avidia adds that he let her rest as soon as they arrived. He pushes open a heavy door. Kavetes comments on the dirty, cluttered state of the room. He says he pities the girl for having to stay in a room like this. Avidia announces that he is coming in. He apologizes for being abrupt and introduces Kavetes as someone who helped in her rescue. Chai stands in the now tidier room, holding a broom and looking towards the door. Kavetes is visibly shocked by what he sees. Avidia points out to Chai that she was cleaning when he told her to rest. Kavetes points at her, stammering about her face. He realizes her face is that of a pre-Merci pulse human, a sight he has only encountered in books. Avidia admits to Kavetes that he too was surprised by her appearance. He explains that her hair is not bleached, and she seems unaffected by ancestral disease, despite losing skin pigment. He theorizes she may have circumvented the damage of Merci pulse by luck, but he cannot say for certain. Chai interjects, stating that her self-introduction is late. Avidia introduces himself and explains that he is investigating the forces behind colors. He also introduces Kavetes, assuring her that he is trustworthy despite his appearance. Avidia tells her they are looking into why the men in the wagon were targeting her. He asks her to tell them more about herself, as any information would be helpful. She says there is not much she can tell them. She formally introduces herself as Chai. She begins her story starting from 3 years ago. Chai explains that she woke up in an abandoned hospital in Chudo with complete amnesia. Kavetes comments that Chudo is an old abandoned town and questions why she was there. Chai explains that when she went outside, everything was colorless and gray. She saw that everyone's faces were mutated like monsters. She recalls how anyone who saw her would run away in surprise. Kavetes surmises that she disguised herself with a mask to live among them, and Chai confirms this. Avidia remarks to Kavetes that her face is that of a human from 300 years ago, a difficult story to swallow. Chai confirms she looked into it herself and discovered her appearance matches humans from the past. An agitated Kavetes points at Chai and demands to know her age. Avidia tells Kavetes to calm down, reminding him that Chai does not know anything either. Avidia asks Chai if her family looked like her, but she replies that she does not know and cannot remember anything else. Kavetes asks what the men in the minivan said. Chai replies that they did not seem to know why she was being kidnapped. The group stands in silence, with the realization that she remembers nothing. Avidia considers that if there is something connecting her to the cult, it must be something specific. Kavetes says her name Chai. Avidia tells Chai there is something he wants to show her. He expresses hope that seeing it might help her remember something. They stand before a large, ominous-looking vault door at the end of a tunnel. An officer reports to Dates that the identities of the 3 people in the car have been confirmed for transport. Their conversation is interrupted by Waze, who rushes in urgently, calling out to Dates. Dates asks what is wrong. Waze demands to know what is happening. Waze questions why they are transporting the captured individuals to the Hydra facility without proper investigation. He points out that it is the 3rd such case this year. His colleague replies that the decision came from higher up, and there is nothing they can do, though Waze remains deeply concerned. The officer confides in Waze that he believes their superiors are putting pressure on them and that he intends to investigate the source. Waze wonders if the cult is involved. His colleague tells him who knows. He advises Waze to stay calm and quiet for now. They watch as the transport vehicle drives away. As a large door opens, Kavetes questions Avidia's decision to show Chai their secrets. Avidia explains that this could be the trigger to restoring her memories, which would be a great step forward for them. Kavetes warns him against treating Chai like an experiment, noting that it took him years to be granted this access. Avidia hands Chai an item. Chai looks at the object in surprise. He explains they are Colorwave safety goggles, a relic that is essential for someone not affected by the ancestral disease. Chai puts on the goggles, thanking him. They enter a vast, towering chamber lined with countless glowing containers. Chai is stunned by the beauty of the colors surrounding her. She wonders how so much color could still exist in the world, and Kavetes explains they gathered and refined all the remaining particles into these pigment samples. Kavetes remarks on how impressive the collection is, musing about how much the pigments would sell for. Avidia sternly reminds him that it is because of people who think that way that these samples can never be taken outside. He tells Chai that she is free to look for now. As Chai gazes at the colors, she wonders why she feels a certain way. Fragments of images flash through her mind as memories start to surface. The sight catches Avidia and Kavetes' attention. Overwhelmed by the sudden flood of sensations, Chai begins to cry. Avidia approaches her with concern, and she apologizes for her sudden tears. Chai explains that for a moment, she felt as if she had remembered something. Avidia asks what it was she remembered. She clarifies that it was not anything specific, but more like a scene or an image. Avidia realizes his theory was correct. She possesses memories related to colors, and he was right to show her. Chai makes a request to Avidia. She asks if she can help with the research at the facility. She explains that she wants to learn more about colors and about herself. The 3 men from the crash, Nihm, Faisam and Jikwam, are bound to chairs in a strange room, confused about their whereabouts. They wonder if they are in an interrogation room because their connection to the cult was discovered. Niham struggles against his bonds, ignoring his companion's warning not to worsen his injuries. A voice from the doorway addresses them by name. The voice announces to Ninam, Faisam, and Jikwam that they have finally met. The robed Dosage Usama, flanked by 2 attendants, welcomes the 3 captives to his side of the world. 2 days later, 2 figures walk through the city streets. One of them questions the other, asking if it is really fine to involve the girl named Chai. Avidia explains that they have only given her simple jobs so far and there have been no particular issues. Kavedes interrupts, stating his concern is not about her work performance. He clarifies that he is talking about the risk of continuing to hide her. He thinks it would be better if they did not. Kavedes points out that the lab is already being assaulted by the cult, and now that they are hiding her there is no reason for them not to attack. Kavedes admits that while he does want information, he does not want to be dragged into any trouble. As Kavedes bids farewell, Avidia offers him his second cup. Avidia then approaches the shop's counter. Avidia asks for the bill. The shopkeeper apologizes to Mr. Avidia, explaining that the flavor of their black tea has changed slightly. The shopkeeper reminisces about the girl who used to work there, calling her a great, honest, and kind helper. They quietly express their hope that she is safe. Elsewhere, a dispute breaks out, with one person insisting what they have is the real color, while another questions where any color is to be found. A third individual tells them to take a better look, pointing out that some red still remains. Avidia walks alone, reflecting that he can sympathize with Kavetes' logic. However, he knew she would be in danger anywhere she went. He decided she would be better off in his laboratory, which could resist the cult's influence. Avidia wonders what Chai thinks about his decision. He enters the lab and announces that he is back. With a warm smile, Chai welcomes him back. Avidia warns Chai not to touch the equipment, as it is still dangerous even with no power. Chai looks at the machine and asks what it is. Avidia explains that it is a color radiation device which compresses and directs volatilized energy. The device unleashes a powerful burst of energy. Chai is in awe of the demonstration. Avidia comments that the output is still unstable and needs adjusting. Amazed, Chai asks if such a large amount of energy can really come from colors and questions what this color force is. Avidia begins his explanation, starting 300 years ago when a light descended from Mercipulse, stealing Earth's pigments and triggering a mutation. The small amount of colored particles remaining on Earth had energy similar to the sun's light embedded within them. He shows that by reacting these particles with organic matter like steam or water, they release their energy. Particles that have released their energy become a colorless ash. Chai asks if hitting the ash with strong light from the sun would make them colorful again. Avidia explains that is the difficult part, as the dense clouds that formed after Mercipulse have never cleared up. She comes to the grim realization that once these color particles disappear, there will not be any more color in the world. Avidia somberly agrees that the situation is unfortunate. Chai pours him a cup of steaming tea. She apologizes, but Avidia tells her not to mind him. Chai smiles, saying she also finds joy in being able to pour tea for someone once again. Avidia admits that her statement surprised him. Chai explains that to her, color was a way to differentiate between things or to value how pretty something is. But after she woke up, she found that both the people and the world had changed. When she had to leave the place she had finally found for herself, she became aware that there was no place for her here. She admits that while this place may not be perfectly comfortable, it is something. Avidia tells her that if she can find happiness from simply pouring a cup of tea for another person, he would gladly drink what she pours. He looks at her and declares that for now, this is where she belongs. Chai's face breaks into a radiant smile as she agrees. She thanks him very much, addressing him as Professor. The scene shifts back to the tea shop, where 2 officers are questioning the staff. One of the officers, Yuzui, asks for confirmation if it was that specific girl. The manager and a worker look at a document with concern. The manager holds up a photograph of a different girl, confirming she was a worker named Chai-chan who went missing. Yuzui understands, remarking that it must have been a disaster and thanks them for their cooperation. The other worker, An, begins to sob for the manager and the missing girl. An laments that Chai was an orphan who was wandering the streets and had only just settled down and given it her all. The manager cries, wondering what she did to deserve such a horrible fate. Outside, Yuzui confirms that this is the shop, and there is no mistake. He looks down from a rooftop and tells Jikwam that he is up. A massive explosion erupts in the street, blowing the shop's door inward. The manager and An are thrown back by the force of the blast. They stare in horror at the source of the explosion. From the smoke and debris emerges the monstrous, multi-limbed form of Jikwam, looming over the terrified onlookers. In a flashback, two assailants threaten a captive, warning them of death if they talk. From below, another figure watches in horror as a body is hurled from the building. Avidia is working at his desk when his phone rings. Answering it, he hears Kavetes' voice on the other end. Kavetes asks if he is free. Kavetes explains that he went to the Kangashia shop and found that the new girl wasn't there. The manager was strangely insistent on knowing why Avidia wasn't with him. Sensing something is amiss, Avidia decides to investigate himself. As Avidia gets ready to leave, he is stopped by Chai. He informs her that he has some business at Kangashia. He mentions that he recently spoke with the manager about her. Chai smiles, relieved, though a little sad she cannot join him. Avidia reassures her that she will be able to go eventually. As he leaves, she cheerfully tells him to take care. After Avidia departs, Chai turns back to the lab and notices that the equipment he was carrying is gone. Alarmed, she looks around the empty room and calls out for the professor. Meanwhile, Avidia arrives at the Kangashia shop. He enters, surprising the manager, who recognizes him and asks if he is closing up for the night. Avidia confirms he isn't closing yet. The manager says he has perfect timing, as she has something to tell him. She then delivers grim news: the girl who went missing was murdered. Avidia asks for more details. The manager explains that the police visited the previous night with a report. According to the document, the girl Chai was kidnapped by 3 men, assaulted in their car and finally killed. Avidia is appalled by the news of Chai's murder. He questions who would spread such terrible fake news. The manager hesitates. She admits that while she did want to talk to him about Chai, there is something else. With tears in her eyes, the manager offers a sincere apology to Avidia. As she speaks, the monstrous Jikwam drops from the ceiling, revealing the entire encounter was a trap. The manager is flung away as Jikwam lands. The creature greets Avidia, whom he calls Black Cloak, and gloats about how easy it was to lure him out. Avidia quickly deduces that the manager was threatened with a hostage and asks Jikwam if he is after Chai. Jikwam confirms this and demands to be told where Chai is. Jikwam states he has no intention of telling Avidia what he wants to know. Seeing this, Avidia fires his weapon. Jikwam callously uses his hostages as a shield, causing them to cry out in alarm. From afar, Dosage watches the confrontation unfold on a monitor. Jikwam issues an ultimatum to Avidia: he will kill the girls if Avidia runs. And if he doesn't hand over Chai, he will kill him right there. Recognizing he has no other option, Avidia steels himself for a fight, declaring that he will no longer hold back. Avidia unleashes a devastating punch on Jikwam. Jikwam curses at the sheer power of the blow. A hostage observes in disbelief as Avidia destroys a nearby wagon with his bare hands. The two combatants trade powerful blows, shaking the ground with the force of their clash. Jikwam seems to be enjoying the fight, commenting that Avidia's strength is not bad. Jikwam skillfully blocks one of Avidia's punches with one of his extra limbs. He taunts him that he doesn't have enough hands to fight him. Jikwam boasts about the superiority of his body. He declares that if Avidia refuses to reveal the girl's location, he will relish the chance to test out his power to its fullest extent. The fierce battle continues amidst explosions and chaos. Jikwam is sent flying from a powerful blow, coughing and cursing Avidia as he struggles to his feet. Standing tall amidst the wreckage, Avidia draws his sidearm and points it at the downed Jikwam, demanding to know what he has done. Noticing a dropped vial, Avidia realizes he has 3 test tubes remaining. He decides it's worth the risk to load one into his gun and try to hit Jikwam with its full power. He takes the shot. The blast hits, but its power is diminished. Jikwam realizes the weapon's output is unstable. He laughs mockingly at its failure. Jikwam points out that the weapon takes too long to reload. He lunges forward to attack while Avidia is vulnerable. As Jikwam closes in for the final blow, a massive, shadowy form appears before Avidia. Jikwam skids to a halt, yelling for it to stop. The fight between Avidia and Jikwam continues. From his viewing room, Dosage looks on, remarking that Avidia is a man worth keeping alive. Jikwam questions Avidia's actions, asking what he is rambling about. Avidia is audibly confused by his opponent's words. He wonders who Jikwam is speaking to. Dosage emerges, calling the encounter fortuitous and good. He tells a surprised Avidia that his research into color has progressed far, which is a pleasant surprise. Avidia identifies the newcomers as members of the cult. The voice greets Avidia as Professor. Avidia angrily asks if they think they can get away with this. The voice claims they have been considerate, but are permitted to do anything within the city. Dosage explains that his opinions have changed based on his observations of Avidia. A team of the cult's soldiers stands ready before a closed door, but their leader instructs them to leave the capture of their target for later. Avidia realizes the fighting was just a diversion. He demands to know the cult's aim and their plans for Chai. Dosage cryptically replies that Avidia has yet to comprehend. The voice explains that Chai is an existence who will bring light into this grey world. Avidia asks what he means. He is told that he does not need to know for now. Dosage assures Professor Avidia that the day will come when the truth is revealed. He announces that they will back down today, but warns Avidia not to forget they can handle him whenever they please. A massive structure appears, and the cult members begin to teleport away. Jikwam accepts the order, saying that's it for tonight and he's looking forward to what's next. Avidia curses in frustration as they disappear. Avidia fires a shot as the cult members make their escape. The area is left in disarray after the battle. He watches from above as the hostages are loaded onto a vehicle. Avidia looks on grimly. Kvedes stands before a shop, shocked to see it closed. He wonders what happened. Avidia appears and calls out to Kvedes. Kvedes turns and asks what's wrong. Avidia says he has something to discuss. Avidia, Kvedes, and Chai gather to discuss the situation. Chai is shocked to learn about the recent events. Avidia explains that the two from Kangashia were sent to the hospital and their memories of last night are vague. Kvedes expresses his frustration, stating this is why he told Avidia not to get closer to Chai. Chai asks why the cult would go to such lengths for her. She then asks who the cult is. Avidia explains that the cult began as an environmental protection organization. After they began exalting color as a god, they formed connections in political and business circles to monopolize its power. He deduces that since the recent events were covered up, their sphere of influence must also include the police. Kvedes remarks that things are getting more troublesome than he thought. A worried Chai asks what they should do. Avidia declares that he has no intention of handing Chai over to a dangerous organization like the cult. Professor Zashu states that if the cult is after them, they have no choice but to fight. Kvedes questions how they are going to fight them. Avidia reveals that he has an idea. Avidia shows them a blueprint for equipment using the power of colors, stating it should be enough to fight the cult. Kvedes expresses his doubt, asking if Avidia really plans to make all of it. Avidia insists that it is possible. He admits, however, that there are limits to what he can do alone and will need their help. He formally asks the two of them for their help. The scene shifts to a wide shot of the cult's headquarters, a massive, imposing tower that looms over the surrounding cityscape. An underling reports that Jikwam has fractured several bones and will take time to recover. Dosage dismisses the concern and orders Jikwam to be given a new body once his treatment is complete. The report continues, stating that Faisam is still showing signs of rejection and mentions Niham. Faisam tries to stop a raging opponent, telling him to cut it out. He insists that it is only a mock fight. The monstrous Niham continues his rampage. Niham cannot accept that his target was deemed worth keeping alive. Standing victorious over a pile of defeated creatures, the muscular Niham declares his unwavering desire to crush the Black Cloak, Avidia. One member explains that Niham regained his lost limbs and gained tremendous power, as his original body was excellent material. Dosage calls it splendid, adding that with his strong willpower they can expect even more. A cult member states that they must make this a success. Dosage confidently declares that they will obtain it. Dosage addresses a massive congregation of his followers in a grand hall. A large tapestry depicts their deity, symbolizing their ambition to receive the blessing of the god of color. Avidia, flanked by Kvedes and Chai, announces it is time to begin their operation, and Chai confirms she is ready. Their location is Kamnevi Mountain, a remote and unsupervised fault zone. In this world which has lost its color from an event called Mercipulse, this mountain is a precious site where color particles can be excavated. As the team sets up their equipment, Avidia calls out to Chai, asking her to pass over the observation unit's cable. Kavedi's pulls Avidia aside, questioning if it's truly safe to bring Chai with them. He reminds Avidia that the cult is actively hunting the girl. Avidia dismisses his concern, brushing it off as nothing. Kavedi's operates a piece of heavy machinery, panting that the work is hard and it's been years since he last used an excavator. Chai offers him a drink. He gratefully accepts her offer. Chai and Kavedi's watch with curiosity. Avidia sets up a large cylindrical device. He tells them to put on their goggles and just watch. The machine whirs to life. The device successfully collects a sample of glowing green liquid. Avidia examines it, confirming it's the same as ever. Kavedi's asks Avidia for the final call. Another team member confirms they should be able to collect the green pigments as usual, and Kavedi's is relieved that the plan is going well. Avidia reports that while the plan is proceeding smoothly, they can't find any pigments of other colors. Chai notes that nearly everything stored in the laboratory was also green. Avidia explains that despite some mixture, the collected samples can be classified under 3 different colors. These are green-colored particles, red-colored pillar crystals, and blue-colored membrane crystals. He concludes the cult has likely already obtained the red and blue, which can't be found there anymore. Avidia states his intent to collect as much green as possible while they're still camped. With the day almost over, he decides they'll stop for the day. He tells the others they should go back to eat, and Kavedi's cheers enthusiastically. The group heads back to their campsite. Back at camp, Chai serves Kavedi's a bowl of soup, telling him it's the same recipe from Kangashia and that food is best after exercise. She asks Avidia if he is going to eat, but he declines, saying he'll eat later. Kavedi's remarks that now that he thinks about it, he's never seen the professor eat since he's always out. Later that night, Avidia stands alone on a cliff, overlooking the distant city. He pulls out a vial of the green substance. He injects it into his neck. As the green vapor dissipates, Avidia reflects. He believes that the girl named Chai will bring a ray of light to their dull world. He knows she is unaffected by the ancestor disease, but is otherwise a normal human. Her memories, briefly awoken when she saw color, may hold the key to determining the cult's goals if they can be retraced. As he ponders this, Kavedi's approaches from behind. Kavedi's joins Avidia, remarking on how chilly it gets at night. He expresses his surprise that Avidia would bring Chai out of the laboratory, but Avidia states it will still be dangerous. Avidia explains that after the assault last week, it's clear that hiding in the lab is useless. He believes it's safest for them to stick together if they are attacked, regardless of where they are. Kavedi's laments that they lack too much information about the cult and colors. He then turns his attention to Avidia, pointing out that he is also a mystery. Kavedi's directly asks what it is that Avidia is hiding about himself. Avidia promises to tell him one day. Kavedi scoffs, calling him a poser, but accepts the answer for now, declaring that he will definitely dig out the truth behind this world one day. Chai lies awake in her tent, finding it reassuring to be outside. She puzzles over the cult's motives, understanding they want to bring color back to the world but not why they need her for it. Despite her confusion, she resolves to trust the professor. In a modern, towering building, a robed figure stands. He examines several large displays showing monstrous beings. Faisum appears from a doorway. He greets the other figure. Jikwam demands to know if Faisum is still in his current form. Faisum is confronted by the monstrous Jikwam. Jikwam taunts him, asking how long he's going to shiver and if he was so scared by Avidia. Faisum stammers, unable to respond. Faisum protests that he doesn't want to turn into a monster. Jikwam grabs him, reminding him of what their leader said and arguing that if they can't fight back, they're delivering themselves to death. Jikwam calls Faisum a coward. He tells him he doesn't stand a chance against the Black Cloak as he is now. A voice orders Jikwam to stop. Desao Jusama appears with his attendants, stating that Faisum's reluctance doesn't matter. He announces they have a special job prepared especially for him. Faisum looks on in horror. At a press conference, an official addresses a large crowd about a gruesome incident in the Shiga district. He reports that a girl named Chai was found dead after being kidnapped and violently assaulted by men in an illegally modified car. He concludes by expressing hope that every member of the Shiga police force will redouble their efforts to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. After the meeting, Yuzui angrily questions his colleague Dates about what they just heard. He can't believe the higher-ups had the nerve to say that after letting the criminals off. Dates calmly tells him to settle down. Dates explains they don't know the kind of pressure their superiors are under. Yuzui remains frustrated, unable to accept that they just swept everything under the rug. Dates interrupts him, telling Yuzui to look at something he's holding. He shows him a photo from the Meisen Bridge surveillance footage, which shocks Yuzui, who remembers a blackout should have prevented any recording. Dates explains they haven't received any official reports about the human figure in the photo. The real problem, he continues, is that if the person in the image is Chai, it means she wasn't killed but was taken away by someone else. When Yuzui asks who, Dates admits that he can't be sure. However, he reveals that one person does come to mind. In an archive room, Dates identifies the person he suspects. He pulls out a file for Professor Avidia, a former university lecturer now researching colors under government orders. Yuzui wonders if Avidia is a member of the cult, but Dates says they'll have to ask the man himself. If Avidia is the man in the photo, it would be the second case where he has appeared. Dates recounts that Avidia took Chai from a runaway car, and a few days later, 2 women from her former workplace were found with severe injuries. He warns Yuzui that their actions are now outside the official investigation and might be noticed by the higher-ups. Yuzui doesn't care, stating that it's fine as long as he can do what is right. Dates asks if Yuzui is sure, reminding him there won't be any overtime pay, but Yuzui states he doesn't need it. Dates agrees, and they decide to pay the professor a visit. Elsewhere, a large group of robed figures gathers at a circular table. Deisao Jusama addresses Faisum, asking if he still insists on his course of action. He reminds him that the lives of him and his 2 companions are within the cult's grasp. Deisao Jusama clarifies that they aren't telling him to die, but to cooperate in fulfilling their vows. Faisum shouts in defiance, refusing to become a monster only to be killed by the man in the black cloak. Deisao Jusama reveals that Jikwam's path is not the only way to gain strength. He presents a case containing glowing vials, explaining that this is color which allows one to directly benefit from its energy when injected. He mentions that Nihm used a different method to inject this drug, strengthening his body to a power that surpasses an exoskeleton. Faisum stares at the vial in his hand, stunned. Deisao Jusama tells him there's no need to apply it to himself directly, but to use it as he sees fit. He explains that Nihm and Jikwam have already completed their jobs. Finally, he tells Faisum that he has high hopes for him. As Deisao Jusama walks away, Yuja questions his leader's decision. He asks if it was wise to let Professor Avidia live and also give Faisum color. The leader replies that Faisum is merely an offering to their god of color and that they must play their hand well. He adds that after hearing Faisum's words, he is certain things will proceed smoothly. Deisao Jusama dismisses the other members and instructs Yuja to come with him to check on how the other 2 are faring. The scene shifts to a massive, complex biomechanical creature being assembled by robotic arms. Yuja and another attendant observe Jikwam's monstrous new form, with Yuja noting his lack of control. He worries that Jikwam may kill the professor. Deisao Jusama dismisses the concern, stating it has to be at least this much. The other attendant notes that Jikwam is a genius with machinery, and giving him both color and a cyborg body is like giving him a toy. The attendant remarks that now no one can stop Jikwam. Deisao Jusama then asks Nihm for his status. Nihm, now transformed, declares he understands how to use the power of colors and can barely wait for his next orders. Deisao Jusama instructs him to accompany Jikwam once his work is complete. At the excavation site, a tired Chai stretches. Kavetes approaches, wishing her a good morning and remarking that she's up early. Chai notes that it's their 4th day and they've collected quite a bit, filling most of their containers. Kavetes looks at the full containers, wondering what Avidia can make out of the collected material. Kavetes comments that he's impressed she can handle working in such an environment. He asks if she has any questions about why the professor is making her do all this. Chai admits that she does have questions. However, she has decided to trust the professor for now because he gave her a place to belong. Chai adds that she feels the same way about Kavetes, believing he also has a place there. Announcing it's time for breakfast, she heads off to call for the professor. As she walks away, Kavetes watches her, thinking that she is too naive. He reflects on the large gap in power between their small group and the cult. Cavetes fears the cult will take away the place and sense of ease that Chai has found. Just then, Avidia powers up a large weapon he's been working on. Chai looks on as she realizes the power output has stabilized and he has completed it. Avidia announces that everything they can do at this point is done. With their preparations complete, he declares that they are going back to Ricto. A vessel flies over Meisen Bridge with an announcement that they will be landing shortly. Yuija turns to address his passenger. He reminds Niham that he has 3 tubes of the drug and to use them wisely. Niham confirms that he understands. The sound of the aircraft startles people on the ground. A person looks up, wondering what the object in the sky is. Another identifies it as a helicopter, amazed to see one in flight for the first time. A vehicle drives along a winding road at night. Inside, Cavetes complains to Avidia and Chai that it took a whole day to load everything. Avidia points out that it was Cavetes' emergency rations that caused the delay. Cavetes argues that he had already narrowed down what he needed, calling Avidia's complaint ridiculous. Avidia decides to change the subject. Cavetes wonders if their laboratory will be safe while they are away. Avidia proposes that they move to a new location altogether, concerned the cult may be waiting for them. He reveals the cult wants both Chai and the color they possess, making relocation a necessity. The group considers the logistical nightmare of moving all their research data and samples. Chai hesitates, considering the difficult situation. Chai suggests storing their research data from the laboratory in a digital format. Cavetes dismisses her idea, explaining that useful electronics no longer exist in their era. He clarifies that they had to record all their data on the paper that remained. Avidia adds that they can try changing the form of the color particles to make them easier to transport when they get back. Avidia considers that leaving the city won't be enough to deter the cult. He notices they are getting close to the city and tells Chai to put on her mask. Chai quickly complies and puts on her mask. Suddenly, an explosion erupts in the street before them. The force of the blast impacts their vehicle. The sudden stop throws the vehicle's contents into disarray. Cavetes demands to know what is happening, while Avidia notes that something feels off. He observes that the streets are unusually crowded. They see a plume of smoke rising in the distance. Avidia looks on in concern, questioning what he is seeing. A massive spider-like mech wreaks havoc in the city streets, surrounded by fire and debris. The crowd panics in the face of the approaching threat. Yuzui takes aim and fires at the giant machine. The mech's powerful leg sweeps through the area, sending people and debris flying. Cavetes is stunned by the size of the machine. Chai tells Avidia she has met the pilot before twice. Avidia tells her to take care of the driving. From his cockpit, Jikwam spots Avidia and declares that he's found him. Avidia emerges from the vehicle, stating he's the only one who can fight the cult. Elsewhere, Deisao Jusama's followers observe the events, confirming that their target has arrived. Deisao Jusama announces that the confrontation is beginning. Deisao Jusama declares they will witness the offering for the revival of the color god. Avidia fires his weapon, scoring a direct hit on Jikwam's machine. Avidia's attack hits the mech. Jikwam taunts Avidia for finally using his rapid-fire ability. He declares it's unfortunate, as he had ample time to prepare a counter. The mech reveals a large, powerful cannon ready to fire. The cannon blast creates a massive explosion near their vehicle. Cavetes yells that at this rate, things are looking grim. Avidia realizes Jikwam is after him and orders Cavetes to drop him off after circling around, while Chai and the color escape. An officer questions Dates about an order to stop the bombardment, asking if he is sure about Yuzui's command. The officer confirms the message just came through, and Dates curses in frustration. Dates orders his officers to prioritize citizen evacuation and to keep away from the main road. He laments how things have gotten to this point and questions the order. He wonders if they are being told to ignore the chaos caused by the mech. Dates watches as Avidia leaps from the moving vehicle. He recognizes Avidia as the color researcher. Just as he questions Avidia's presence, Yuzui punches him. Yuzui apologizes and runs off, leaving Dates to handle the situation alone. From his cockpit, Jikwam searches for Avidia. Avidia emerges from the smoke and fires at the mech. Cavetes yells the plan to Avidia, promising to drop him off on the other side of the main road after the next turn. Avidia confirms he's got it, trusting Cavetes. Avidia leaps from the speeding truck. He skids across the ground as the truck drives away. Chai screams out for the professor in worry. Avidia gets to his feet and greets his foe. Niham in his monstrous form approaches Avidia. He tells the Black Cloak that he is happy they can meet again. Avidia silently faces his powerful opponent. Niham brings his massive weapon down with incredible force. Avidia manages to block the powerful blow. He immediately returns fire with his own weapon. Avidia fires a direct shot at his monstrous opponent. Niham swings his weapon through the blast, seemingly unfazed. Niham's relentless assault connects with a powerful impact. Avidia grunts in pain as he is thrown backward. Niham taunts the Black Cloak, remarking on how weak he has become after knocking another combatant aside. Niham declares that he has waited a long time for this fight and will not be disappointed. He adds that Jikwam is also running rampant throughout the fragile city. Niham warns Avidia that he will soon run out of fuel. He points out that this applies to both Avidia and his weapon. Avidia stands resolute, his armor glowing with renewed energy. In the distance, the truck carrying his companions drives away. Chai has a horrifying realization that the professor might have been storing color inside his own body. This might explain why she has never seen him eat. She wonders about the professor's true identity. Despite her protests, Kavetes states firmly that they are leaving. Kavetes explains that his priority is to keep Avidia's belongings in the car safe until the conflict is over. He tells her that if she wants to be useful, she must do as he says. Chai quietly agrees. With their course set, they speed away from the battle. Avidia charges forward, closing the distance between them. Niham roars for him to attack, proclaiming that he won't be satisfied with a half-hearted fight. Avidia digs his feet in, preparing to lunge forward. He rushes toward Niham, who readies a powerful swing. Their attacks are about to collide with explosive force. Avidia deftly dodges Niham's powerful swing. He deploys a glowing blade from his gauntlet. He moves in for a swift counterattack. Niham roars in frustration as he is struck. Avidia's blade slices clean through Niham's arm, disarming him. Avidia lands heavily after his successful attack. A rhythmic thumping sound echoes from Niham's body. Niham's body begins to steam, signaling a transformation. Avidia watches in surprise. Jikwam's mech smashes through the debris. He shouts that the Black Cloak cannot escape. Jikwam vows that this time he will cut Avidia's body into pieces. He fires a massive projectile from his mech. From afar, Yuja screams at Jikwam. He reminds him that they have not issued an order to kill that man. Jikwam yells to shut up. He ignores the command and launches a missile. The missile streaks through the air towards its target. Jikwam's mech closes in for another devastating strike. Jikwam's mech brings its massive fist down. Avidia is caught in the crushing blow. Avidia reveals a new, more powerful form, effortlessly stopping the attack. He mocks Jikwam, calling it a pity that he was only toying with him. He questions how Jikwam was unable to survive with the technology and resources available in Shiga. He expresses his disappointment that this was all Jikwam was capable of, even after all the time he was given. Avidia reveals his full power, surrounded by floating energy discs. From his wrecked mech, Jikwam stares in disbelief, muttering that it's impossible. Avidia unleashes his attack. The energy discs fly towards their target. Jikwam's mech is bombarded by a relentless series of explosions. A massive explosion engulfs the battlefield as Avidia stands victorious. One of the followers expresses frustration that the specialized color exoskeleton into which they poured so many resources was destroyed. Kavetes mutters that it's impossible. Deisao Jusama, however, sees this as a wonderful turn of events, believing Avidia is slowly but surely approaching the existence they seek. Avidia stands tall amidst the destruction. The battle has left a significant portion of the city in ruins. Avidia groans, feeling the effects of the battle. He injects himself with a glowing tube to continue fighting. He checks his gauntlet, revealing his remaining supply of tubes. He reflects that he only has 4 tubes left for his own use. He also has 3 tubes for his radiation equipment, hoping his supplies will last. Niham, in a monstrous form, faces off against Avidia. Niham growls that he is not done yet. Avidia shouts that he ignores the cult's orders and is fighting purely out of his own hatred for Niham. The two powerful combatants stare each other down across the battlefield, preparing to clash once more. Avidia dodges an incoming strike and fires his weapon. The blast sends Nihm hurtling into the ground. Lying in the rubble, Nihm comments on Avidia's display of power. Avidia calmly states that for him, this much power is the most comfortable. Nihm begs for someone to tell him this is a joke. Kvetes and Ani find themselves at a dead end, the path blocked by rubble. Ani worries about turning back and encountering their pursuers. Suddenly, Yuzui and another soldier confront them at gunpoint, demanding to know why they are there. Kvetes and Ani surrender, but Yuzui accuses them of lying about being unarmed. Yuzui asks if they were with Avidia, connecting him to the color cases of the past few years. Kvetes tells them they are out of luck if they are looking for Avidia, as he is not here. The other soldier demands to know where Avidia ran. Kvetes tries to clarify they are not allied with the people destroying the city, but the soldier cuts him off. The soldier angrily demands to know where Avidia is. Suddenly, an explosion erupts between the two soldiers. Avidia rushes past, knocking the soldiers aside. Kvetes and An shout out to Avidia and the professor in alarm. Yuzui takes aim at An and orders them to stop. The fully transformed Nihm appears, telling Avidia that even if Jikwam was beaten, he himself is still unscratched. Avidia retorts that they are just getting started. Nihm readies his blades for the coming fight. Avidia rushes towards his opponent. He cries out, questioning why this is happening. Avidia questions why Nihm is wrecking the town, believing the cult was after the color and chai. Nihm admits that he doesn't know what they are after either. He only knows that they were talking about awakening the god of color. Nihm declares that his own goal is to take Avidia's life. Nihm is struck by a powerful beam of energy. Avidia presses his weapon against Nihm's chest at point-blank range. The ensuing blast rips through the area. The force of the blast throws Avidia back. He grunts in pain from the impact. Nihm snatches one of Avidia's glowing tubes. He quickly injects the substance into his own arm. Energy courses through Nihm's monstrous form. Avidia wonders in shock if Nihm has also taken in the power from colors. Nihm's powerful blow sends Avidia hurtling through the air. The two powered-up fighters charge at each other. Their attacks collide with explosive force. Nihm charges forward, his body crackling with energy. Avidia meets his charge head-on. The two opponents are locked in a fierce, close-quarters struggle. The two fighters break apart briefly before clashing again. Avidia activates one of his last tubes. He jams the glowing tube directly into Nihm's eye. A brilliant flash of light erupts from the point of impact. A massive explosion throws both Avidia and Nihm back. The shockwave tears through the battlefield. Professor Zashu states that he cannot believe the two are fighting, using the power absorbed from color. Yuzui can only ask what is happening. Ani looks on in horror, calling out to the professor. The brutal fistfight between Avidia and Nihm rages on. Watching from the sidelines, Kvetes grows increasingly agitated, wondering what is happening. He questions how much longer the brawl will continue. The combatants exchange powerful blows. Avidia unleashes another blast from his weapon. Yuija observes that this is Avidia's third tube. Nihm, still standing strong, taunts Avidia, asking if his power is already spent. As the fight rages, Avidia recalls Nihm's words about the cult's plan to awaken the color god. He contemplates the catastrophic consequences for Ricto just as he is overwhelmed and struck down by his foes. Nihm lands a devastating blow, sending Avidia reeling from the impact. The force of the blow sends Avidia crashing into a nearby structure. Kvetes curses in frustration, seeing Avidia in trouble. Watching the brutal fight, Chai feels helpless, wondering if all they can do is watch. She wonders what she should do. Lying amidst the rubble, Avidia watches as Nihm approaches. The steaming form of Nihm declares that he will end this now. In response, Avidia silently prepares his final tube of color. Avidia injects the contents of the final tube into his own system. As he does, another canister of color rolls to a stop before him. However, before Avidia can react, Nihm snatches the canister from the ground. He then injects its contents into his own body. Believing Avidia has used his last resource, Nihm declares victory is his. But from the sidelines, Yuija cries out in horror, pleading with Nihm not to inject the substance. Kvetes mutters that things are not looking good. Suddenly, Chai dashes forward, clutching another vial of color. Kvetes shouts for her to stop. Chai is determined, stating that she must help the professor. She believes it is what she must do right now. Meanwhile, Nihm screams in agony as the new color surges through his body. The injection causes a violent, uncontrolled transformation. The transformation completes, leaving Nihm as a colossal, raging beast wreathed in chaotic green energy. Avidia can only watch from the ground. As Nihm continues to roar, Avidia analyzes the new energy. He deduces that the pure green particles will react with Nihm's body to cause a massive explosion when he is too close to survive. Ignoring the danger, Chai runs towards Avidia. She calls out to the professor and holds out the color. Avidia urgently warns her to stay back. At the same time, Nihm cries out in confusion, feeling something flowing into his head. Suddenly, a cataclysmic explosion of light and energy erupts from Nihm's body, engulfing everything. In the split second before the detonation, Chai throws the vial through the air. Avidia lunges, catching the vial. He grabs Chai, desperately trying to shield her as he carries her away from the blast zone. The ground shatters and vaporizes at the epicenter of the blast. Avidia and Chai are caught in the shockwave. They are sent tumbling violently through the flying debris. In the quiet aftermath, Faisum looks on in shock. Avidia pushes himself up from the rubble. He spots Chai lying unconscious nearby. He calls out her name, asking if she is all right. Chai slowly sits up, her expression unreadable. Avidia's attention is drawn to her leg, which is revealed to be a prosthetic. In the aftermath of the explosion, a report confirms that Jikwam has been towed and is ready for transport. Meanwhile, another voice announces that Lord Yuja will soon begin the retrieval of Nihm's remains, assuring others that the commander is on their way. At the epicenter of the blast, masked figures arrive and urge each other to move quickly. They activate a large mechanical claw, initiating the transportation process for the recovered assets. Yuja stands over the scene. Nihm's monstrous corpse lies in the rubble. He acknowledges its sacrifice, stating that it has brought the world one step closer to regaining its color. Lifting a part of the remains, Yuja declares that the first offering is made and calls on his followers to praise Nihm's ignorance. A crowd of robed figures responds with applause. They watch the event unfold on a large screen. After the ceremony concludes, Yuja walks away through a corridor lined with his followers. The scene transitions from the smoldering city. The focus shifts to a close-up of Avidia, who seems to have witnessed the proceedings. Avidia awakens in a medical bay. A bandaged man, Dates, greets him as Professor Avidia. Dates explains that he is in the medical bay of the Shiga police force, though they currently have no doctors. When Avidia tries to sit up, Dates urges him to stay still. Dates explains that Avidia bore the brunt of the explosion, suffering a hole through both arms. Avidia gets up, stating he doesn't need healing. He asks how long it's been, and Dates informs him it's been 5 hours and that his acquaintances are safe. Avidia apologizes and says he will be taking his leave. Dates stops him, introducing himself as a member of the Shiga police force who wants to talk. Dates makes a request for Avidia's cooperation. He is investigating cases related to color and the cult, but since such inquiries are forbidden, he has few allies. Avidia apologizes and says he cannot help. Avidia explains that he is in police custody and cannot afford to ally with people, even if their goals align. Dates finds this a pity. As Avidia leaves, Dates offers one last thing, thanks on behalf of everyone living there for saving them. Avidia dismisses the gratitude, stating he has no need for it. Dates muses that while Avidia's caution is wise, he can't blame him for avoiding risks. However, he believes Avidia is the key to stopping their enemies. Avidia stops suddenly, asking where his 2 companions are. Dates tells Avidia to go on first, informing him that they are in the interrogation room on the 3rd floor. Inside a stark interrogation room, Kavedes scratches his head in frustration while Chai sits beside him. Chai looks down with a worried expression. Avidia bursts into the room, calling out to Chai and Kavedes. They both express their relief at seeing him. Chai rushes to his side, telling him how glad she is that he's all right. She grabs his hand. Avidia looks down at her, a serious look on his face as he begins to speak her name. An officer named Yuzui appears and bluntly informs Avidia that Chai is not human. He tells a confused Avidia to take a look. He presents an old X-ray film, explaining that her skeletal structure and internal organs are artificial. Yuzui reveals the truth. Chai is an android created before the ancestor disease, which is why she seemed to be immune. Avidia is shocked by the revelation. He asks Chai if she was aware of this. She says no, explaining she had no idea until after she woke up there. She explains she thought the joints on her wrists and ankles were simply how her body was meant to be. She struggles to accept that she is an artificial being, especially since she could feel warmth and eat food. Avidia agrees with her. He admits that having touched her skin on occasion, she feels far too human. Kvetes is equally stunned, questioning how such advanced technology, capable of making an android cry and laugh like a human, could possibly exist without any record. Avidia comes to a sudden realization. He now understands that Chai's true nature is the reason the cult is pursuing her. Chai looks on, her face filled with worry and confusion. By the water, Chai stands by the railing, her hair blowing in the wind. Avidia checks on Chai, who is still processing the recent revelations about her identity. He apologizes for bringing her outside, but encourages her to take all the time she needs. Avidia reflects on the cruel reality Chai must face. Elsewhere, Kvetes greets a cloaked Avidia, apologizing for the delay. Kvetes announces it is time for them to depart as well. Kvetes leads Avidia into a small, cluttered apartment. He offers Avidia a seat, admitting he has no tea. Kvetes apologizes for the state of the place and the lack of a proper space to talk. Kvetes asks about Chai's condition. Avidia reports that she has lost her appetite and stopped doing her usual chores. Kvetes remarks that it must be hard on her. Avidia says her behavior confirms something important. Avidia explains his theory: the cult is after the lost technology hidden inside Chai's body. He speculates on the tremendous power that could be unleashed if the cult combines this craft with the power of colors. Kvetes adds that information from before the Mercy Pulse is nearly impossible to find. He notes that Chai's memory loss isn't total. He reasons that since the cult has a monopoly on such tech, they could retrieve data from her as a storage medium. Avidia wonders how this ties to the cult's goals. Avidia brings up the god of color. Kvetes questions if he means the god the cultists invented. Avidia confirms a cult member told him they are trying to awaken this god. While Kvetes finds the idea absurd, Avidia argues that they cannot simply turn a blind eye to it. Avidia explains the cult's belief in a god of colors with the power to change the world. Though Kvetes calls it a myth, Avidia continues with his theory. He theorizes the cult is probably trying to create a similar being using their technology and the power of color. Back at the waterfront, Avidia reflects on his inability to protect Chai with his current power. He resolves to find another way, beyond just researching weapons and colors. Chai calls out to him, addressing him as Professor. Chai tells Avidia that she now understands why the cult is after her artificial body. As the realization sinks in, she confesses that the life she has lived feels more and more like a lie. As tears stream down her face, Chai laments that even they must be an imitation. Avidia addresses her gently, asking if she feels anything when she cries. Chai touches her tears and realizes they are hot. Avidia tells her that those emotions are hers alone, just like her desire to feel the breeze. He reassures her that it doesn't matter if her body is man-made, because she is alive. Avidia tells Chai that her tears are proof that she is living. He insists they are not lies and that she should continue to be herself, just as she has always been. Smiling through her tears, Chai agrees that she is herself. Avidia suggests they head back, and Chai, feeling better, proposes they have some tea. Elsewhere, Dosage leads a ritual, ordering his followers to scatter a yellow particle mixture. The substance envelops several large, monstrous beings, causing them to cry out in pain as their bodies begin to crystallize. As the creatures are overcome by the crystallization, they writhe in pain. Yuiger expresses concern for Faisum. Dosage, however, remains calm, stating that what he seeks is their steadfast willpower. Dosage observes the results of the ritual. Noticing that one of the figures remains standing, he questions if this isn't a cause for celebration. In a dilapidated industrial area, Avidia prepares to test a new device. He unleashes a powerful blast of energy from it. Propelled by the device, Avidia soars through the air inside the ruined building. Watching from the ground, Chai and Kvetes are amazed that Avidia is actually flying. Chai excitedly instructs him to try changing directions and spinning around. Suddenly, something goes wrong and Avidia loses control, spiraling out of the sky. His companions cry out his name in alarm. After the test flight ends, Kvetes examines the prototype, noting it's an old, previously unusable model. Avidia explains it's an aviation mechanism. He thought it could give them a chance against the cult's giant weaponry. Cavetes understands now why Avidia dug up the antique. It was because of the god of color and the threat of the cult's unimaginable weaponry. Avidia states they have a mountain of work to do. Their tasks include developing weapons, relocating their laboratory, and converting the colors into portable samples. Chai suggests they ask for help from other color researchers. She thinks that with help, they could achieve what they cannot do alone. Avidia explains that most other researchers have died off in recent years as attacks targeting color have increased. Avidia states there were not many to begin with, and he cannot drag the few survivors into their conflict. Cavetes argues that the battle has grown too large for them to handle alone. He insists it is time they made themselves some allies. After a moment of consideration, Avidia agrees that he is right. Resolved, Avidia decides he will try asking, seeing it as a way to protect them. Elsewhere, Dates calls Yuzui, who asks if something has happened. Dates urgently asks if he can come over now to discuss that man. Yuzui agrees and says he is heading over now. In his office, Dates sighs, reflecting that the girl was quite a surprise. He concludes that the man named Avidia is also worth investigating. In a flashback, a figure in a protective suit recalls past events. He remembers discovering how to survive in the city and wonders how events led to the current situation. A memory of a brother named Jikwam is interrupted by chaos. In a cult facility, followers report a rampage at the creation dock, identifying the attacker as Jikwam. A monstrous, transformed Jikwam tears through the facility. Cult members open fire, but their attacks are useless. The assault is brutal and swift, leaving a trail of destruction. A cult member reports to their superiors that Jikwam has deserted. He confirms that there have already been victims. Yuija reports that Jikwam is heading their way and that they must hurry. He orders the protection gates to be closed. Jikwam relentlessly pursues them. To their horror, the cult members find the gate will not close. They realize the high-security system has been hacked. Jikwam corners a leader. He tells the leader that he has nowhere to run and made the wrong choice. The leader taunts Jikwam, vowing to rip the damned mask from his face. Jikwam is met by a charge of masked, sword-wielding believers. Jikwam effortlessly cuts down his attackers. He dismembers one with a single, brutal strike. As Jikwam attacks the leader, his hand is stopped. Deisao Jusama acknowledges that Jikwam's egotistical side is a wonderful thing, but he has gone too far. Deisao Jusama declares that it is unforgivable, even for Jikwam, to kill the believers of Iodopsy. Jikwam scoffs at the hypocrisy. Deisao Jusama reminds him their mission was to steal the girl from the man in the black cloak and that their job did not stop there. Jikwam retorts that he has seen what the cult plans to do to the city after using him and the others. Deisao Jusama confronts Jikwam, surmising that he must have accessed their scripture. The high priest asks if Jikwam now knows of their plan. Jikwam scoffs, declaring that what they have concocted can't even be called a plan. Jikwam tells Deisao Jusama that he's met many who spin pretty tales, but the cultists are even worse. He mocks their belief that sacrificing 3 people will awaken the god of color and bring it back to the world. He calls them stupid for wanting to kill them for a fairy tale. Declaring he's done with this situation, Jikwam dismisses their make-believe religion. Deisao Jusama calmly remarks on Jikwam's choice of words, finding it amusing. Jikwam challenges him, asking if he can truly say that he is wrong. Deisao Jusama explains that it is the duty of the followers of Iodopsy to believe in the revival of the world and turn their scripture into reality. Jikwam realizes with dawning horror that they are serious about making their plan a reality, regardless of whether it's true or not. Changing tactics, Jikwam taunts Deisao Jusama, informing him that one of his precious sacrifices is escaping. The high priest realizes he's talking about Faisum. Jikwam declares that they cannot stop him. Jikwam shouts that since they plan to kill him anyway, he knows all their secrets and will do whatever he wants. He lunges forward, unleashing his power. A massive blast of energy erupts from Jikwam, engulfing the cultists. He grits his teeth, thinking about their obsession with color. Jikwam declares that he is giving back the power of color that they gave him. He unleashes a focused beam of energy from his hand, sending it hurtling towards them. The beam grazes Deisao Jusama's head as a follower cries out in alarm. The high priest dismisses the injury as irrelevant, instead choosing to prepare a funeral for his fallen brethren. He turns his attention to a more pressing matter, asking for the whereabouts of Faisum. Meanwhile, Jikwam communicates with Faisum, who is attempting to escape, telling him to run away. He offers Faisum a device that might help his escape. However, he warns that even if he makes it out, not much will change. Faisum reaches a large metal door, his escape route. He desperately uses the device from Jikwam, pleading for the door to open. With a beep and a clank, the mechanism works. To his relief, the door slides open. As the door opens, Faisum is met not by freedom, but by the imposing figure of Dosage. The high priest asks where he was planning to go. He tells Faisum to come with him, informing him that there are still things he must do. In a flashback, Dosage escorts a captured Faisum through a hallway. He tells Faisum that after the initial orders were given, they did not explain much of their plans to him. Dosage begins to explain the truth behind the Mercy Pulse, stating it was a divine revelation, not a natural disaster. Their goal is to recreate it by gathering the technology and color that was lost. Faisum asks what he means. Dosage elaborates that once the Mercy Pulse happens, the world will overflow with color, and everything will return to how it should be. He explains that the first step to manifesting the God of Color requires 3 sacrifices. Faisum repeats the word sacrifices in disbelief. Dosage confirms that he means the lives of the 3 of them. He reveals that everything has been in preparation for this moment, so that with the God of Color, they will obtain the power of the Mercy Pulse. Dosage tells Faisum that his fate is already tied to theirs and asks if he will offer up his body for the sake of the world to come. Faisum stares back, his expression hidden but his shock palpable. Faisum clenches his fists, telling them not to pretend to ask for his consent. He defiantly states that he will not become one of their sacrifices or work for them anymore. Dosage calmly replies that Faisum's strong heart will be perfect for the Trivi shaft. An announcement for Sauji Station echoes as train doors prepare to close. Commuters nearby complain that the card readers have broken down yet again, rendering them unusable. The surrounding streets appear dilapidated and in need of repair. Inside an office, a man named Daishi is startled by the arrival of Yuzui. Daishi apologizes for the urgent summons and invites him in. He asks Yuzui for an update on the streets, and Yuzui reports that things have mostly calmed down, with the main street expected to be repaired in 2 weeks. Yuzui explains that rebuilding Kathia Street is the highest priority since it's the center of the Shiga district and sees the most traffic. Regarding the recent riot, Yuzui notes a silver lining. Although many people were wounded, not a single person died. Daishi quietly agrees. Yuzui brings up his thoughts on the incident, mentioning the 2 men, Ninmu and Jikwam, and questions if they were truly only after Professor Avidia. Daishi expresses doubt, pointing out that with their weapons, they could have tried harder if killing Avidia was their goal. Yuzui speculates about an order from the cult, but Daishi feels that this situation is different somehow. According to eyewitnesses, Yuzui continues, it seemed like the attackers defied the cult's wishes by targeting Professor Avidia. He dismisses the idea that they were trying to kidnap Chai. He wonders if it was a personal grudge. Daishi agrees it's probable, but adds that during the chaos, they weren't the only ones who targeted the professor. Daishi shows Yuzui an X-ray. Yuzui is startled by what he sees. It is Professor Avidia's X-ray, and Daishi explains that it's impossible for Avidia to have been in the operating theater. He reveals that while all the other injured people were being brought into the station, Avidia was the only one sent to a different floor. Daishi states his hunch was right. The cult spies in the police force took advantage of the situation and sent information about Avidia to the cult. He reveals he copied the data from their machine, a process that took all night. Yuzui is taken aback, realizing the cult dared to enter the station and is covering all their bases. Yuzui admits he can't blame them for wanting to find out more. Daishi agrees, as there are too many mysteries surrounding Avidia. They examine the X-ray again. It looks like armor similar to Chai's, but there's too much noise to be certain. Daishi explains that injecting color into one's veins grants strength and regenerative armor, and it would mean trouble if the cult got wind of it. The decision is made to inform Professor Avidia. Avidia takes a sip from his cup. Chai asks if Kavetes is running late, and Avidia confirms he is. Chai then asks the professor who they are going to meet. Avidia explains they are meeting Professor Zashu, whose work was the foundation for the pigment refining technique. He was the founder of the study of the power of color. Avidia adds that Zashu has since retired and now works alone from his home, which is also his personal lab. A sudden crash startles Chai, making her drop her cup. The disturbance is Kavetes, who has arrived. He greets Avidia, asking if he's ready to go. Kavetes immediately starts talking about finding a good place to eat, while Avidia reminds him that this isn't a sightseeing trip. They set off down the road. The group pulls up to a large, makeshift-looking building. Avidia is surprised, having heard it was a normal single house, while Kavetes guesses that Zashu must have added some new rooms. Avidia quietly observes the structure before heading inside. Professor Zashu greets Professor Avidia, saying he's been waiting and that it's been a while. Avidia addresses him by name. They shake hands, exchanging pleasantries. Zashu comments that Avidia has completely changed. He explains that he expanded his lab with a friend's support, which led to stricter regulations nearby, making it safer. Zashu notes that labs will likely become the last line of defense for color researchers. Anna greets Professor Avidia, mentioning they haven't seen each other since Shiga Technical College. As they walk through the lab, Avidia is surprised to see Anna. Avidia asks why Anna is there. Kavetes explains that he is Professor Zashu's assistant. Watching the reunion, Kavetes remarks that it's weird to see Avidia actually has friends. Yuija thinks it's a happy and rare sight for the professor. Kavetes agrees. He reflects that since most of Avidia's peers have died, it's significant that he's found a living acquaintance. Avidia thanks Professor Zashu for his understanding and expresses his relief that both Zashu and An are fine. Zashu philosophizes that they've both had it hard, and in these times, helping each other is only human nature. Avidia takes his words to heart. Zashu then suggests they get to work on some research, which Arne observes with interest. A group of robed figures admire a newly constructed piece of magnificent equipment. The leader, Desao Jusama, observes the magnificent new technology. He explains that it was built using a program from Jikwam and asserts that with it, they will be able to match their foe. Desao Jusama seeks agreement from his followers. The leader calls out to Faisum, who is standing on a platform above. Faisum agrees to use the equipment, but states he has a request first. Faisum asks for confirmation that the color they gave him will grant him power. He laments that his Aniki was only one step away from killing Avidia, but failed due to a faulty injection. Vowing to succeed where his Aniki failed, he demands the equipment so he can use the color to chase down his target. Faisum declares that he will live on and carry out his Aniki's will. A subordinate asks the head priest for instructions. Desao Jusama considers the request. He gives the command to proceed. The equipment begins to assemble for Faisum. Elsewhere, Avidia holds up a test tube containing a vibrant green liquid. Professor Zashu confirms that the experiment was a success. His companion is in disbelief, marveling that Avidia managed to condense multiple test tubes worth of green particles into a single one. Professor Zashu explains that refined tubes of color normally contain impurities, but they were able to remove them and recrystallize the substance. He gestures to the large machinery, explaining that the additions to his house were built specifically for this refining process. He humbly adds that he did not invent this on his own. It is the culmination of his fallen comrades' research, which was passed on for him to finish. Avidia is moved by Zashu's words. He resolves that he will not let the proof of his friend's existence go to waste and will do what he believes is right, just like Professor Zashu. Chai listens in silence. Chai, wearing a full helmet, laments that she is tired of wearing it, though she admits it can't be helped. She is startled by Arne, who wishes her a good afternoon. Arne points out that Chai has been wearing the mask all day. Chai explains it's just like Professor Avidia. Arne asks to see her face, and Chai is taken aback. Arne explains her curiosity, noting Chai is Avidia's assistant. As she reaches for the mask, she reassures Chai not to worry, stating that no one in their town discriminates based on looks. Chai tries to stop her. Arne removes the mask, revealing Chai's face. She recoils in shock, staring at her. Arne is stunned into silence. Just then, Avidia intervenes, telling Arne there is a reason for Chai's appearance and offers to explain. Later, the group is gathered around a table to discuss the situation. Arne, now composed, understands. Avidia apologizes to Arne for the shock, explaining he had intended to tell her later. Professor Zashu states that he believes Avidia. He finds the situation fascinating, remarking that he's never seen anything like it before. Chai holds up an X-ray, explaining that all her flesh has been replaced, making her almost human rather than a machine. Zashu is stunned, finding it beyond his imagination. Arnie interjects. Kavedi's defensively tells Zashu not to refer to Chai as a thing. Kavedi's tells Zashu to have some sympathy, as his words are worrying Chai. Zashu concedes that Kavedi's is right and apologizes. Chai tells them it's fine, explaining that she has come to terms with her situation and thanks Mr. Kavedi's for his concern. Avidia addresses Professor Zashu. He expresses his concern about what the cult's technology hunters might do to Chai if they capture her. He states that for Chai's sake, he needs a way to fend them off. Zashu readily agrees. He says that is what he wishes for as well. 1 week later, the work is complete. Professor Zashu informs Avidia that the device should work well enough, though it will still require some fine-tuning. A sudden noise alerts them. Arne wonders who could be there, and Avidia decides to take a look. He sees 2 figures standing outside. Avidia is surprised to see who the visitors are. Avidia confronts the 2 men at the door, asking how they found the place. Dates explains they tracked the car his friend used during the riot. He then delivers some unfortunate news. Dates states that it concerns Avidia's safety and asks for a moment of his time. A large crowd has gathered in the street. A figure addresses Professor Avidia. Dates apologizes to Avidia for bringing him downtown. He leads him to a store, promising they won't be disturbed. An announcer prepares the crowd for the unveiling of the big screen. The screen turns on as the crowd watches in excitement. The citizens are relieved that things are returning to normal. Without personal radios or TVs, the screen is their primary source of information and a community gathering place. The announcer introduces a message from the sponsor who funded the reconstruction. The sponsor is revealed to be the Senzen clan, a rich family from the Higa district. Niham speaks to the crowd, mentioning how the shops and screen are a central part of their lives. He expresses pride in having contributed to their revival. He tells the crowd that helping them return to their old lives would make him happy. The crowd cheers in response to his speech. Avidia looks at an X-ray, questioning how the cultists acquired it. Dates explains that the cultists are not only after Chai, but also Avidia's technology. Zashu remarks that the X-ray reveals parts that look like a machine, making it unbelievable that it's from something alive. Dates tells Avidia he is something else, just like Chai. Sitting across from Zashu and the others, Dates demands that the professor give them a straight answer about what he is. Avidia listens intently. Avidia explains that he invented his own body, a color-powered exoskeleton. He clarifies that it is armor using color as a power source, different from what the church produces, and that he never takes it off. Dates presses further, asking if Avidia is even human. Avidia firmly states that he is, without a doubt, human. Their conversation is interrupted when Kavedi's points out that it is getting noisy outside. A sudden explosion throws the occupants of the room into disarray. Zashu stands amidst the wreckage, realizing they have just been attacked. Dates is shocked by what he sees. Kavedi's is on the ground, his body contorting in pain as crystals grow from his back and head. Avidia recognizes the color crystals stuck to Kavedi's body. He fears that something is not right outside. Outside, the entire crowd has been transformed into a violent mob, with glowing crystals growing from their heads. Avidia realizes the citizens have turned into a mob, all looking like the afflicted man inside. Kavedi's, now transformed, stands beside Avidia and asks what is going on. The transformed citizens stand silently, their faces obscured by the crystal growths. Dates urgently warns that they are being targeted. The crystal-headed mob rushes towards Avidia. Avidia prepares to engage the attackers. Avidia fires a powerful energy blast from his arm into the charging mob. The force of the blast throws the attackers to the ground. Dates asks if Avidia shot the mob, and Avidia explains he used a spread shot to ensure their companion was unharmed. Avidia tells Dates to go back to the store and protect Chai, as he doesn't expect police to arrive. Dates agrees to help, and Avidia thanks him. Avidia is surprised by their resilience. He realizes they recover quickly from his attacks. He questions why they are only after him. A voice from the shadows confirms that he is correct. A robed figure appears, acknowledging that the attack isn't enough to kill Avidia. The figure declares that while he has no personal grudge, he will seize this chance to enact his revenge against the church. A report confirms that the sending machine has been returned, and its containment is complete. A subordinate asks the commander why he accepted Faisam's proposal. Dosage observes that the plan seems to be a little different now. He believes the subject's value as a sacrifice won't be degraded by something so simple. Dosage explains that, on the contrary, this may bring him closer to being a complete sacrifice. He clarifies that the thought processes of humans, the brain waves they call emotions and passion, can be refined into color power. This desire to live increases the potential power of the color he uses. This is one of the reasons he sent the physically weak Faisum after Niham and the others. Dosage states there is nothing to worry about, as this is all within the scope of their plans. His subordinate notes that the situation is quite ironic. The commander concludes that the more the subject tries to defy his fate of becoming a sacrifice, the further he pushes himself toward that end. A horde of crystal-infected people surges through the city streets. A beam of green energy shoots out. Avidia unleashes a shockwave, pushing back the attackers that have closed in on him. Avidia curses, realizing he cannot find a way through the crowd. The voice of their controller, addressing him as Black Cloak, asks how long he plans on keeping this up. The figure stands over the horde, taunting Avidia that he will never reach him if he doesn't kill a few of them. Avidia realizes it is likely that the owner of the voice is the one controlling the civilians. He figures out that the controller inserted crystal particulate into their spinal cords to control them from afar. He resolves that he has to find him quickly. Zashu stands before a console, believing it will all start soon. Clutching a glowing vial, he vows that he will succeed this time for his brother and for Jikwam. He taunts Black Cloak to try and reach him, boasting that he still has some fun things in store. A fallen, crystal-infected person lies on the ground as someone asks what happened. Dates tells a man to calm down, assuring him that help should be on its way for the riot. Cavetes remarks that the situation is bad and the crowd looks impenetrable. Cavetes wonders if Avidia is okay and says he'd at least like to know how he's doing. An infected civilian stands before them inside the building. Arne cries out Cavetes' name in warning. As the creature lunges, Cavetes curses in surprise. The attacker grabs one of the survivors, crystals glowing on its body. Dates urgently tells Yuzui to bring the rope. Cavetes and the others grab the attacker, shouting to hold him down. The subdued man says that was a close call. Dates wonders what is happening outside. He suggests they go to the rooftop. Leading the group, he explains they should be able to see more clearly from up there. Upon reaching the rooftop, one of them spots something in the distance. Looking down, they see that Avidia is completely surrounded by the mob. Avidia holds his ground, weapon ready against the onslaught. He blasts away several of the infected civilians. He curses as the civilians close in, grabbing at him from all sides. The mob piles onto Avidia, overwhelming him with their numbers. Avidia lets out a grunt of pain as he is dragged down. From above, the scene shows Avidia at the center of a massive dogpile of infected civilians. Cavetes and Arne shout for Avidia, the professor, from the rooftop. A massive burst of energy erupts from the pile, throwing the attackers back. The crystal-infected civilians lie motionless on the ground after the blast. Avidia watches as the crystals that were bound to the civilians begin to vanish. The group on the rooftop questions what is happening as the color disappears. Arne calls out to Mr. Dates to get his attention. She points out that there seems to be a pattern to the way the color is disappearing. The group observes a string of color leading out of the boulevard. The trail leads down an empty street towards a large building. Avidia intently focuses on the path ahead, questioning what lies at the end of the string of color. The crystal-infected civilians cry out in pain as the strange energy dissipates from their bodies. The surrounding area is a scene of utter destruction. Amidst the chaos, Avidia continues his advance, striking down one of the afflicted. Avidia leaps past the disintegrating bodies of the infected. He realizes that the color crystals have a time limit. He deduces that they are vanishing in the same order they were sprayed, effectively creating a trail for him to follow. Avidia sprints forward, confident that following the path of desaturation will lead him to the controller's hiding place. One of Dates' companions reports that they can't get a connection with headquarters. Dates grimly accepts that they must shoulder the burden of the situation themselves. Avidia races through the dissipating crowd, his weapon glowing with energy. He remains focused and determined on his pursuit. He sees a large group of still infected people at the end of the trail, confirming he is close to the source. Without hesitation, Avidia charges into the remaining horde. He weaves through their attacks, determined to break through their lines. He leaps over a large piece of debris to continue his advance. Avidia slides across the ground, dodging enemies and maintaining his speed. Taking to the rooftops, Avidia swiftly leaps across the ruined cityscape. He observes that there are not many people with crystals left in this vicinity. From his vantage point, Avidia spots a large building, suspecting his target is inside. He wonders if his quarry is within the structure. Without a moment's delay, he launches himself from the roof and smashes directly through the building's exterior. Soaring through the opening he created, Avidia quickly orients himself midair. He lands firmly on the ground. His weapon is aimed and ready for the inevitable confrontation. Avidia finds himself in a vast, seemingly empty warehouse with only a small figure at the far end. He is surprised to find that there seems to be nobody there. Suddenly, a hidden weapon system activates, revealing an elaborate trap. A massive shutter door behind Avidia rolls open. It reveals another horde of crystal-infected individuals waiting to attack. Caught in a pincer movement, Avidia can only stare in disbelief. Kavedi's and his group watch the scene unfold. The mastermind, Professor Zashu, descends before them. He announces that he has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Professor Zashu explains he was waiting for the moment Avidia would be separated from his allies. Kavedi's demands to know if Zashu infected all those people just to kidnap Avidia and Chai. Zashu coldly replies that he doesn't care about the cult's plans and that they mean nothing to him. Kavedi's is left stunned by the revelation. Professor Zashu clarifies that he never had any intention of kidnapping them. He reveals his goal is to murder both Chai and the Black Cloak. By doing so, he will end the cult's plans, which is his true objective. Professor Zashu descends before Kavedi's and his group. In a surreal statement, he announces that he has been trying to reach them concerning their car's extended warranty. Two figures attempt to open a color-controlled lock, noting it will take some time. Suddenly, Avidia appears and smashes the lock open. He sends the figures flying with a powerful strike. Inside, Avidia finds a horde of crystal-infected people, realizing Chai and the others are still in danger. He deduces that these people have been kidnapped as part of a plan to keep him there. Avidia believes that any more victims would be unacceptable. He spots a window, considering it as a possible alternate route. As he moves, the infected swarm him. He struggles against the horde, finding it difficult to advance. An observer notes that it will take more than a few of their people to stop him. Frustrated, Avidia searches for another way through. A device suddenly bursts through the wall, flying over the crowd. It speeds towards the center of the group of infected individuals. The device detonates in a bright flash of light. The explosion clears a path through the horde. The blast incapacitates many of the crystal-infected people. A figure descends from the opening in the wall, using a jetpack to control their descent. The newcomer lands, revealing a jetpack, and Avidia wonders why it's here. Ani calls out to Professor Avidia, relieved they made it in time to help. She remarks that this is a perfect situation for a trial run. The new professor tells Avidia to grab the joysticks as he switches the device to manual mode, which Ani confirms. Avidia equips the jetpack. He is determined to hurry, stating that Chai and the others are in danger. Elsewhere, Yuja lands hard on a rooftop, clearly in distress. Kavedi's and another ally are also present, looking defeated. Professor Zashu stands over the defeated group, telling them resistance is useless. He declares his intention to kill them. Having fallen, Kavedi's curses his situation. Yuja weakly tells Zashu to stop. Zashu brutally strikes Kavedi's down. He then turns to Yuja, stating that before the Black Cloak arrives, he will erase Yuja from the world. Confused, Yuja asks why. Yuja argues that Zashu should be going after the professor and the church, his supposed enemies. Zashu retorts that Yuja doesn't understand and that he intends to turn him into one of his toys. He claims that only the weak can torment other weak people. Zashu then unleashes a powerful attack. Just as Zashu's attack is about to hit, Avidia swoops in with the jetpack. He intercepts the attack with a powerful punch. The professor who provided the jetpack shouts Avidia's name in alarm. Avidia's punch connects squarely with Zashu's face, sending a shockwave through the air. The onlookers are stunned by the sudden turn of events. Recovering from the blow, Professor Zashu acknowledges that he has finally arrived. He identifies Avidia as the Black Cloak, the top of the hit list, as Avidia declares it's time to begin. The two adversaries charge at each other. Avidia and Professor Zashu meet in a fierce clash, their powers colliding with explosive force. A figure shouts for Chai to run. He confronts an armored adversary, Professor Avidia, with a powerful blow. He sends Avidia crashing through a nearby window, shattering glass and scattering the people inside. The protagonist struggles after the exchange. Avidia declares that the ends justify the means. He states his determination to defy his orders and tells the protagonist that he too must strengthen his resolve. The protagonist protests that there are still people inside. Avidia launches a powerful projectile attack. The protagonist watches in horror. Avidia dismisses the lives of the people inside as mere collateral damage. An explosion rips through the area. Avidia swiftly maneuvers through the air, closing the distance to his opponent, and the two engage in a dynamic aerial battle. Avidia lands a crushing blow. The protagonist is sent reeling. Before he can recover, Avidia is on him again. He grapples him with immense force. Avidia tightens his grip, vowing to crush his opponent and achieve his goal. Straining against the immense pressure, the protagonist's armor begins to crack. He is hit with a powerful point-blank energy blast. Avidia boasts that his engine has his opponent's beat. Refusing to give up, the protagonist charges his gauntlet. He fires a concentrated energy burst back at him. The protagonist's blast finds its mark, engulfing Avidia in a massive explosion. After the blast, Avidia crashes to the ground. The protagonist lands nearby, analyzing the situation. He realizes he's managed to destroy Avidia's heavy arms. Believing he can win by targeting the helmet's signal plate, he prepares for a surprise attack. The team responds that they are on their way. An is shocked to learn he's fighting Avidia, the one who is controlling the others. A team member asks if there is anything they can do. He gives them the location of Chai and the injured crew. He injects himself with a stimulant to continue the fight. He tells them to tend to their wounds while he stops this order stooge. The punch connects with a massive, shattering impact. Fusamu lunges towards Avidia, believing one powerful strike will be enough to claim his life. Fusamu expresses his shock at the unexpected outcome of his attack. He stumbles back, his body wobbling uncontrollably from the failed assault. Fusamu is thrown back by the force of the blow. Avidia grabs a medical device. He rushes towards the unconscious Chai. Avidia holds Chai, preparing to treat her injuries. He determines that she is still breathing and needs immediate help. A massive ship descends from the sky and Avidia looks up. He continues to hold the injured Chai in his arms. Onlookers watch from a nearby balcony. Arne watches the scene unfold. Dates is also among the onlookers. Kavedis observes from a distance. The defeated Fusamu lies on the ground, his body crystallizing. A group of robed figures, led by the imposing Dosage Jusama, disembarks from the ship. They approach Avidia, who sits with Chai amidst the destruction, while the body of Fusamu lies between them. Dosage Jusama addresses Professor Avidia, remarking that this is their first time meeting in person. Avidia glares back, recognizing the robed figure. The defeated Fusamu wonders why his plan to gain the power of color failed. Dosage Jusama explains that Fusamu has obtained the sacrificial chroma power necessary to revive the Chromatheon. Dosage Jusama informs Fusamu that his actions and desires have pleased them. Fusamu realizes that by trying to defy them, he was simply playing into their hands. Dosage Jusama adds that trying to slay Chai was an unforgivable act. Because Fusamu still clings to life, they will now execute the true meaning of the word sacrifice. Avidia shouts for them to wait. He tells them that they are the guilty ones and that their actions are unforgivable. He accuses the order of destroying Shiga and taking the lives of innocent people. Avidia argues that just because Fusamu may be a criminal, it does not give them the right to do as they please with his life. Avidia sternly warns Dosage Jusama to make this the last time they do anything like this. Dosage Jusama calmly agrees to conclude things there. Fusamu is stunned, wondering if Avidia just saved him. He recalls a similar event in a back alley, remembering Avidia as his boss, Jikemu. Avidia looks on silently. Dosage Jusama grabs Fusamu's head, stating that he will end things as Avidia requested. Dosage Jusama announces that the groundwork has been laid to revive the divine chroma and the final ablation is near. Avidia questions if they still intend to destroy the city for their divine chroma. Dosage replies that their objective is not destruction, but the regeneration of the world. He announces that the time has come for them to live. As the ship ascends, Henri tells Avidia that he still needs to evolve and must do what is necessary before the unveiling. Professor Zashu adds that he awaits Professor Avidia's next move with anticipation. With the ship departing, Avidia leaps away, carrying Chai to safety. From a vehicle, two individuals survey a desolate industrial site. One laments that they never thought Shiga would end up in such a state again. The other agrees it's a shame, adding that while Shiga may be a den of criminals, it's not a pleasant feeling to see it this way. Elsewhere, Professor Zashu is led through a ruined structure, remarking that thinking about how things might have ended up gives him the willies. Zashu eagerly asks if they have finally found the treasure he's been searching for. His guide directs him onward. He then quickly moves forward. He asks his subordinate Senzen if they have kept this discovery a secret from the other people of means. Senzen assures him that they wouldn't dream of telling anyone else. Zashu stands before a massive, glowing crystal embedded in the rock. Kavetes loudly declares that he wants to eat. He specifies that he wants the pasta at Kango Shah. Avidia gestures to Chai, who is resting in bed, and says it's probably not a good idea to ask her right now. Kavetes laments not knowing another tasty place. Avidia mentions he knows a good spot, and they decide to go. Kavetes is impressed by a large serving of broiled meat. He marvels at a dish with a shining sauce. He also enjoys the atmosphere of a restaurant serving Far East cuisine. At a high-class restaurant, he praises the first-rate ingredients. Despite it all, he concludes that none of it compares to Kango Shah's, while Avidia simply drinks his tea. Chai dreams of a place where the wind feels good. It's the only place she feels like her true self. She wakes up. She wonders why she dreamt of the past. Her thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door, and a voice announces they are coming through. Avidia brings Chai a bowl of soup, explaining that he's only given her ready-made food and wanted to try making something himself. He admits it's all he can make and asks if it looks edible. Chai tries it and says it's good. Avidia expresses his relief and tells her he'll provide anything she needs. Chai then addresses him as Professor and asks if he would take her somewhere. 2 months have passed since the devastating incident on Cassia Street. It was the second major disturbance of the year, a tragedy that resulted in an immense loss of life. A lone, cloaked figure walks through the solemn area. The figure, Avidia, reflects on the mysterious drug that was released during the screen switching on ceremony. The chemical continues to afflict countless innocent people. The city is filled with those afflicted by the ongoing crisis. Inside a hospital, one patient is finally ready to be discharged, eager to leave their room behind for good. Kavetes, the discharged patient, complains that the worst part of his stay was the food. He sits with 2 officers, Dates and another with a jaw mask, when Avidia arrives. Avidia explains the bags he is carrying are courtesy of his professional contacts. Dates remarks that Kavetes must have been worried after his surgery, but Kavetes just complains it's not enough food for him. The officer with the jaw mask apologizes to Kavetes, believing his wounds were his fault. He laments that if he had not been so rash, things might have turned out differently. Dates quickly interrupts, insisting that he is the one who should apologize for bringing everyone into town in the first place. Kavetes dismisses their apologies, stating he knew the risks. The jaw-masked officer points out that Avidia acted to protect them. Dates adds that without Avidia's help, he would have been far more injured. Avidia redirects the blame, stating that the Order was responsible for all of it. Avidia expresses his gratitude to both officers for risking their lives to defend Kavetes and Chai. Surprised, Dates notes he came to apologize but was thanked instead. He and his partner then pledge their full cooperation. As the 2 officers walk through the hospital corridor, Dates grimly observes that the chroma particles continue to claim lives without end. His partner then solemnly suggests that it might be time for them to consider leaving the force. The jaw-masked officer angrily recounts how they were betrayed during the incident, with orders to hold fire, premeditated delays in reinforcements, and jammed communications. He argues they cannot do the right thing under such command. Dates agrees, acknowledging that the police are now mere puppets of the Order. Dates reflects that he became an officer to protect the town's people. He reasons that if they were to leave the force, the Order would simply eliminate them. Therefore, he concludes, the best way to help Professor Avidia is to stay and fight from within. Dates resolves that for the time being, they must remain calm and endure their situation. His partner agrees. They decide to keep their eyes open for opportunities that only officers like them would have before running out of the building. As Kvedes and Avidia leave the hospital, a truck pulls up. Avidia recognizes the driver as Professor Zashu, who has come to pick them up. Inside the vehicle, Zashu mentions that he appreciates the change of pace from being stuck in his lab. While driving, Avidia asks about Zashu's work. The professor reports that the irradiators are complete, but other systems are still in development. He explains they need new weapons to counter the Order's chromatheon, as their current methods are insufficient. After a moment of silence, Zashu asks Avidia how Chai is doing. Chai is seen resting peacefully. Arne reports to the others that Chai should be able to function normally but is resting for the time being. Kvedes expresses his relief that she only sustained heavy bruising. Arne adds that this is fortunate as she is unsure if Chai can even receive transplants or transfusions. In the lab, Kvedes complains about their string of losses and demands a better approach. Avidia begins to explain a technical strategy involving jamming the Order's mechanical operations. Kvedes cuts him off, asking for a more direct, nuts-and-bolts solution from Professor Avidia. Professor Zashu announces that he has an idea for a new way to fight the Order. He believes it will be highly effective if it works. However, he warns them that this new method could pose a considerable risk to his own health. Professor Zashu confirms to Avidia, Kvedes, and Arne that he has been experimenting with channeling chroma power, explaining their goal is to augment Avidia's exoskeleton to accumulate green chroma particles. Kvedes is shocked to learn this was a possibility all along. Zashu admits that while theoretically feasible, there are complications. Arne warns that the experiment would likely endanger the professor's life if it goes wrong, and Kvedes adds that he has never attempted anything like it before. Despite the risks, Professor Zashu insists it's the best way to protect Avidia. He explains that success would not only prevent him from running out of color, but also enable stronger, more intense battle techniques. Arne vehemently objects, calling the experiment reckless and too dangerous. Kvedes sides with her, addressing Professor Zashu directly. He fears that if Avidia absorbs too much of the green substance, his body could explode. Kvedes argues they can't afford to put their most valuable player's life on the line so quickly. After a moment of silence, Avidia speaks, declaring that it's worth a shot. He reassures a worried Kvedes. Avidia acknowledges the experiment's dangers but expresses trust in his ability to identify the risks and carry out the procedure safely. Professor Zashu enthusiastically agrees. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure muses that they can hardly afford to lose Professor Avidia either. The scene shifts, showing wide views of a desolate city. The view settles on a long line of robed figures bowing in unison. Inside a massive structure, a robed subordinate Yuja informs Deisao Jusama that the altar has been prepared. He states that all that remains is to await the arrival of the god vessels. Deisao Jusama inquires about the progress of their oblations, and Yuja confirms that it is proceeding within expectations. Yuja offers to lead the way. As they proceed, Yuja remarks that he never imagined their overseer would personally grace Shiga. He reflects that if Fusamu's equipment hadn't blocked the remote detonation of the pillory, things would have been simpler. Deisao Jusama agrees. He admits that their opponents gave them a hard time. They enter a chamber where 3 ornate, crystalline skulls are on display. Deisao Jusama declares that with these, they can finally proceed to the next stage. Yuja reports that the groundwork for their plan is complete, believing they can now obtain the results they failed to achieve with Fusamu. Deisao Jusama expresses his approval. Deisao Jusama decides their next move is to try and make contact with someone. The scene transitions to a lavish party. Guests are thanking their host for a memorable evening. The host, an elderly man named Mr. Senzen, addresses his guests. He expresses that he is glad to hear his guests are pleased. He strikes up a conversation with a younger man, reminiscing about how he and the young man's father were on great terms. The young man acknowledges this, stating his father frequently mentioned how indebted he was to Mr. Senzen. Mr. Senzen calls the young man's father a lion of a man and expresses his certainty that the son will become just as fine a politician. He offers his support should the young man ever find himself in a bind. Raising his glass, he proposes a toast to the lad's promising future and a grand evening, declaring that all expenses are on him. As the crowd cheers and glasses clink, Mr. Senzen is suddenly struck by a strange feeling. He wonders what is happening. He collapses to the ground. Mr. Senzen lies unconscious on the floor amidst the shocked partygoers. The scene briefly flashes to an operating room where surgeons are working on a complex, artificial-looking heart. Later in his bed, Mr. Senzen is in disbelief as he is told he has only a month left to live. His attendants regretfully inform him that this is the physician's diagnosis. He angrily questions how this can be. He exclaims that his checkup last month indicated nothing nearly so severe. After his attendants leave, Mr. Senzen quietly accepts his fate. He reflects that he knew all along that an illness at his age would be too late to treat. He finds the situation wretched. He laments that all the wealth he has accrued over decades will simply vanish like borrowed paper. Mr. Senzen finds it ironic that after obtaining everything he could ever want, he is now set to lose his own life. Clenching his fists, he desperately resolves to find a way. He commands his subordinates to find a way to cure him, telling them to sacrifice whatever is necessary to achieve it. Chai finds herself in a dreamlike state, questioning what she sees. Before her is a bright light and a distant figure, and she wonders if she is looking at a reflection of herself. In her vision, the figure shatters into crystalline fragments. Chai jolts awake, panting from the dream. A loud clunk outside her door draws her attention as Kvetes loudly complains to Avidia about just getting out of the hospital. Chai opens the door to find them, asking what is happening. She suddenly remembers that today is the day of the experiment. Anna gently tells Chai that she needs to rest and to leave the experiment to them. Chai finds Avidia and Anna expressing her concern. Chai admits to feeling nervous. Avidia places a reassuring hand on her shoulder, promising everything will be fine. Avidia expresses his confidence in the procedure and his colleagues. Chai agrees, deciding to stay behind and pray for their success. Anna announces it is time, and she and Avidia depart for the experiment room. Chai watches them go. Left alone, Chai reaffirms her faith in the professor. An unsettling image flashes in her mind. She decides that once the experiment is concluded, she will tell him about the strange dream she had. In the experiment room, Professor Zashu speaks of the machine's purpose. He views their work as a duty to their fallen comrades. Avidia agrees. Chai watches from behind glass. Zashu instructs Avidia to prepare for the procedure. Avidia removes his coat, revealing his exoskeleton. Chai watches through the observation window, amazed. She is impressed by the sight of his chroma power exoskeleton. He seats himself in the apparatus. Kvetes arrives, eager for a closer look. Avidia shoos him away. Anna tells him to be patient. Kvetes laughs, promising Avidia he will keep Chai out of the room until they are done. Anna reassures Professor Zashu that she will manage any issues that arise. Avidia expresses his gratitude. Professor Zashu confesses his initial reluctance for the plan. He explains his resolve stems from the need to stop the order from harming more innocent people. Avidia accepts the risks involved. With everyone in position, Professor Zashu gives the command to commence the trial, and the machine whirs to life. Tubes connect to Avidia's exoskeleton. He is secured in place. Chai looks on. Ani initiates the chroma power influx, activating the supply tubes and refinement pipes. The system begins to hum with energy. Energy flows through the system. The machine intensifies its operation. Ani notes that the transmission rate is stable and informs the team they will proceed to the next phase. Professor Zashu watches the controls intently. A transparent shield encloses Avidia as the experiment's intensity increases. Kvetes senses something is wrong. Ani panics, yelling for Professor Zashu. She tells him that the rotation rate is dangerously high. However, the professor calmly insists the trial is proceeding smoothly and ignores her warning. Professor Zashu silences Ani with a chilling threat, warning her not to interfere. He implies that interfering might endanger Avidia's life, leaving Chai and Kvetes horrified by the turn of events. Professor Zashu turns to a shocked An and tells her to listen closely. He explains that he has a task he must fulfill and that his actions are to ensure their peers' sacrifices were not in vain. Zashu declares his intent to use the power of color to mold Professor Avidia into a majestic host. Chai calls out Zashu's name in disbelief. Kvetes shouts for him to stop, forbidding him from entering the room. The machine roars to life under Zashu's control. Ani confronts Zashu, demanding he stop the machine and his irrational nonsense. Zashu questions her accusation, suggesting that she of all people should understand his motives, claiming she must have seen him. Suddenly, Date strikes Zashu from behind. As Zashu recoils, Kavedi's yells for Ani to cut the power. Ani realizes that tampering with the wiring could cause the entire rig to malfunction. She concludes the main switch is their only hope. Date strikes Zashu again. Ani calls out to Kavedi's. She grabs a power source. She throws it across the room. Kavedi's catches it midair. The device in Kavedi's hand pops open. Ani and Zashu find themselves in a tense standoff, weapons aimed at each other. Zashu calmly suggests they stop the madness, reminding them that their priority should be saving the professor. Kavedi's agrees and tells Zashu to stop the machine. Zashu offers a deal. If they throw aside their weapons, he promises Avidia will survive. Ani lowers her weapon. Kavedi's drops his as well. Zashu smiles, pleased with their compliance. Kavedi's lunges at Zashu, striking him. Zashu is caught completely by surprise. Kavedi's unleashes a flurry of attacks, slicing through Zashu's defenses. He yells for Ani to use the power now that she has the chance. Ani retrieves a weapon. The machine powers down. Kavedi stands over the defeated Zashu, telling him it's his own fault for pulling a gun. He grabs the professor, demanding answers to his many questions. With a weapon pointed at him, Zashu makes a startling claim: Avidia is not human. Kavedi's is left speechless by the revelation. Kavedi's immediately asks Zashu to repeat what he just said. Ani rushes to Kavedi's side to check on him. He tells her he is perfectly fine. At that moment, Chai enters the room, calling out for the professor. She sees the chaotic scene before her. Avidia emerges, his exoskeleton glowing with immense power. He lands heavily on the floor as the others cry out his name. Sometime later, the police have arrived at the chaotic scene. At the precinct, Dates informs them not to be alarmed, as they are not being charged with anything. He explains that the security camera footage has cleared them of any wrongdoing. Chai asks Dates if it is safe to assume that Zashu was working with the Order. Dates confirms her suspicions, showing them a membership card found on Zashu as proof. He adds that Zashu was likely involved in all color-related incidents over the last few years. Chai quietly absorbs the devastating news. Tears well up in Chai's eyes as she laments that Zashu had always seemed so nice. Ani informs everyone that once the investigation concludes, ownership of the lab will be transferred to them, according to the will. Ani accepts the arrangement. In the duty room, Kavedi's asks Ani if she's feeling better. She confirms she is and asks about Avidia. Kavedi's reassures her that while he has not woken up yet, he will be fine. Kavedi's ponders Zashu's words, wondering if Avidia truly is not human, and if that means he was lied to. Two attendants approach a set of large doors, addressing Mr. Senzen and asking for a moment of his time. A voice from inside invites them in. The pair announce they are coming inside. Inside, they find Mr. Senzen in a state of disarray, surrounded by women and empty bottles. He gruffly asks his attendants, Yukaku and Mukaku, what they want. They respectfully urge him to stop his current indulgence, explaining that it is certain to harm his health. Senzen angrily smashes a glass. He is frustrated that 2 weeks have passed without any progress towards a cure. One of his attendants explains that they have brought someone who claims they can cure him. Intrigued, Senzen orders them to let the person in. A robed figure enters the room. He introduces himself as Vijay of the Iodopsy Order. Senzen reacts with disdain, questioning the legitimacy of the order. He calls the idea asinine, stating he doesn't believe in fairy tales like the gods of color. Senzen declares that he has solved every problem in his life with money and sees nothing a god could do for him. Vijay points out that despite Senzen's wealth, his condition remains, whereas the gods they worship are more than capable of helping. Senzen challenges him, asking what would happen if their attempt fails. Vijay confidently replies that their method could never fail. His interest piqued, Senzen tells his attendants to call a chauffeur. While riding in a car, Vijay brings up Senzen's reputation as a collector, particularly of objects with color. Senzen confirms this, boasting about his vast collection acquired from every merchant imaginable. He mentions their high market value. He emphasizes that above all, the feeling he gets from looking at them is truly out of this world. They arrive at a large, sterile-looking complex, and Senzen exits the vehicle. He is greeted by Dosage standing at the top of a grand staircase. The robed figure welcomes him with open arms, proclaiming that the light of hope he has sought is with them and that they can cure what ails him. Inside, an operation commences on test subject 44, involving the injection of a color sample. Senzin observes the subject, noting his poor condition. An attendant explains that the man's name is Ninmu and he was gravely injured in a traffic accident, leaving him with no relatives. Senzin expresses sympathy. Vijay remarks that while it is sad, Ninmu has found salvation through color. As the substance is injected, Ninmu lets out a grunt of pain. His body cracks and transforms violently. Senzin watches in utter disbelief. Moments later, he stands fully healed and physically enhanced, leaving Senzin to question if the color injection truly just healed the man's wounds. Vijay explains that such is the power of color. He clarifies that it's not merely a technological force, but something that alters flesh and grants power. Awestruck, Senzin murmurs about the power of color. Now convinced, he eagerly asks for the drug, believing it can cure his illness. Vijay agrees that they will provide it. However, he states there is one condition. A container is opened. Vijay elaborates that the reason they worship color isn't for its potential as a new fuel or its medical applications. He leads Senzin towards a display of tapestries, explaining that color is far more than a mere energy source. It is a divine entity that holds the power to change the very world. Vijay recounts a cataclysm from 300 years ago, when a light called the Mercy Pulse rained down on Earth, stripping them of color, wisdom, and even their human forms. He describes it not as a disaster, but as a revelation from on high. It reverted their advanced technology and brought them closer to primitive life forms, a tribulation bestowed upon all hominids. He continues, explaining their divine task is to repent for their past foolishness by restoring their species to its proper form and rebuilding the world they lost. The gods of color who appeared with the Mercy Pulse enlighten them on how to answer this calling. To realize this new world, they are gathering all the color they can find. Senzin, taken aback, asks what they are talking about. He impatiently asks for their condition, offering to pay any amount to be cured. Vijay then reveals their true desire. From his vast collection, they want his largest color crystal to make use of it. Senzin is stunned into silence. Realizing they have been after his prized possession the whole time, Senzin is furious. He staggers in pain. Vijay tells him that he has run out of time, and that this is his defining moment to use his riches to help their dream become a reality. He adds that it is for his own sake. After a moment of pained consideration, Senzin relents. He agrees to give them the crown jewel of his collection if it will let him live even a little longer. Senzin kneels and thanks Vijay, who clasps his hands and assures him that he will receive the Chromatheon's holy protection. When Vijay asks what's wrong, Senzin admits that he has never been a man of faith and has always relied on his money, finding it difficult to truly believe. Vijay seems unconcerned by his confession. Vijay asks Senzin about the feeling he had when he first saw his giant crystal. He asks if it was a kind of spiritual awe. Senzin tears in his eyes, admits that it was beautiful and that he cried when he first saw it. Vijay tells him that those very tears prove he is not faithless. Vijay reveals that the power to cure his illness has been within his reach from the start. He adds that with the crystal, they can do more than just cure him, they might even be able to grant him a greater gift. He suggests, for instance, that they could grant him eternal life. Senzin is left captivated by the possibility. An officer bursts into an office, urgently calling for Mr. Dishi. He explains that the event is happening all over town. Stunned, Dates questions what he is being shown. The flyer in his hands clearly advertises an auction. Professor Zashu addresses the public, acknowledging the fear caused by recent events. He announces his decision to hold an auction of his personal treasures for the good of the people. He reveals that these gems contain the rare substance known as color. Zashu promises to donate all proceeds from the auction to the restoration of Shiga. Furthermore, he invites the attendees to the auction. The event will include a grand feast with the finest food and drink. The crowd listens intently as he hints at a condition for attendance. He reveals the catch: participation will be limited to a select few chosen by lottery. Citizens across the city anxiously check their tickets. Zashu urges the winners to meet him soon. The venue will be ready in 3 days. He notes the mention of gems of red. Avidia connects the auction to the Order's plot to revive their Chromatheon, confirming their involvement. Dates identifies the auction venue as a cultural center built during the reconstruction effort. Avidia reveals he already had Yuzui photograph the location while it was being prepared. Looking at the photos, Avidia finds the presence of heavy machinery suspicious for a simple dinner. Chai wonders if they are parts for a new weapon, remarking that they look like giant mechanical limbs. Avidia confirms he believes the Order intends to activate a weapon based on the divine chroma in an event they call their unveiling. Dates adds that he has pulled more information from the station's investigation records. Dates provides a detailed map of the venue, including its electrical system. He tells Avidia's team to use it if they can. Avidia accepts it gratefully, stating they will use the data to form a plan. Avidia then asks the professor a question. He asks what they should expect if the Order's claims about the power of red are true. Dates explains that the color red possesses immense power, even in small quantities, and that a researcher who found a crystal was captured by the Order. He theorizes that the Order will use their experiments in mixing colors to unleash weapons with unimaginable destructive power, which they will call their guards of color. With the Order's preparations complete, Avidia asserts that they must not fail to stop them. Dates' group agrees to leave, promising to report any new findings. Avidia decides to prioritize the immediate threat, telling his team he will assemble the necessary equipment while Anu consolidates their documents. Later, Anu tells Chai they should call it a night. Anu expresses her relief that Professor Avidia is safe. Chai laments feeling more powerless than she ever imagined. Anu confides that her greatest fear is also the thought of becoming incapable of doing anything. Suddenly, Chai remembers something important. Chai realizes she still hasn't told Avidia about a troubling dream she had. A bad feeling has lingered ever since, and she feels an urgent need to warn him before something terrible happens again. Elsewhere, Kavedi's contemplates the color red. He wonders how its power relates to yellow, the color made from red and green that turned citizens into rampaging puppets. Kavedi's approaches Avidia, asking for a private word. Avidia agrees to listen. He asks Avidia to recall the day of his experiment. Kavedi's reveals that he was the only one who heard what Professor Zashu said right before he was consumed. Kavedi's reveals Zashu's last words, that Avidia is not human. He admits he doesn't want to believe it, especially since Avidia had claimed otherwise. Doubt swirling, Kavedi's demands that Avidia remove his mask immediately. Kavedi's insists that he doesn't care what Avidia is. As his friend, he just wants to be told the truth. Avidia looks away, apologizes, and says that he cannot do it. Frustrated by the refusal, Kavedi scoffs. Avidia explains that he can't reveal the truth in their current location, as he cannot risk anyone overhearing. He tells Kavedi that he wants to maintain the trust between them. He promises to arrange a private meeting soon to explain everything. Just then, Chai arrives and apologizes for interrupting. Avidia tries to dismiss her, saying it's not a good time. Kavedi tells her it's fine, acknowledging that they can't talk there anyway. He turns back to Avidia, promising to hold him to his word and ask him a whole heap of questions soon. An announcer informs the crowd that admission will begin in an hour and a half and asks them to get their tickets ready. He instructs them to form a calm and orderly line. As cars approach in the distance, the announcer exclaims that they have arrived. A guard directs the newly arrived vehicles. The guests from Higa are welcomed and told that there is a locker room available for their belongings. In the locker room, Kavedi tells Anu to shut it, complaining they are late because she took forever to pick her clothes. A guest is startled as knives are thrown past him. Kavedi stands beside Chai, holding a communicator to his mouth. He calls out to Avi, asking if he can hear him. Avidia reports that while their entry was a bit rough, they made it in okay and feels suspiciously lucky that no one noticed them. He tells Kavedi not to hesitate to use his gun if anything comes up. Kavedi confirms that he will not hesitate. Avidia decides it is time for his entrance and asks Anu to be his guide. Anu confirms she will support Avidia the whole way in. She tells the professor to leave the pathfinding to her. Avidia announces he is heading for the giant weapon. He asks Kavedi and Chai to inform him if they notice anything strange. Kavedi replies that he does not see anything out of the ordinary. While Kavedi bemoans the torture of being surrounded by tasty food, Chai calls out his name with urgency. Avidia tells Chai not to worry about a nightmare for now. He assures her she will be okay with Kavedi there and promises to come running if something happens. Chai acknowledges his reassurance. An announcement is made, inviting lottery ticket holders to enter. Guests are reminded to have their tickets ready and to walk, not run. A grand hall is filled with guests and tables laden with food. Guests marvel at the quality of the meals in Hydra. They comment on the high life the residents must be living. A guard stops an individual, telling them only people with tickets can enter, while the person insists their ticket was stolen. Nihim begins his speech, noting that folk from both sides of the city's river are gathered under the banner of rebuilding. He explains that the event's purpose is to fund a fleet of rafts to rescue those who suffer. He encourages the crowd to eat, drink, and lose themselves in the luster of his treasures, proclaiming it will be a wondrous occasion for all. Kvedes gets Avidia's attention over the comms. He reports that Nihim is present, but something about him is strange. Kvedes notes that Nihim is wearing some kind of goggles, perhaps to hide a sickly condition. Avidia speculates that they are anti-chromawave goggles, meaning they could be planning to use a potent color. Arne realizes this is not good, and says they need to do something before the red is brought out. Avidia agrees and tells them to hurry onward. The auctioneer's gavel comes down, marking an item as sold. He announces that Master Craftsman Onju's 3 art plates are sold for 1,800,000. Guests in the audience wonder what is taking so long, and if the gems with color are actually there. The auctioneer presents the next item, a kimono from the Leckless Age from the Corey family collection. Avidia reports to Arne that he has arrived at their destination, but notes that countermeasures have been set up. He identifies a chroma power suppression lock on the door. Arne realizes the lock is not on the map and asks if he thinks he can open it. Avidia replies that using force would cause an explosion, but that it is not a problem. He decides to take the foolproof way, stating that he will disassemble the door, though it will take some time. As he works, Avidia silently pleads for Covetous and Chai to not get hurt, promising he will be there soon. The audience watches the stage with anticipation. The auctioneer announces that the hour has come to reveal the item everyone has been waiting for. Kvedes grits his teeth, knowing that the showstopper is finally being brought out. A large crate is rolled onto the stage as Nihim presents the peerless treasure he spent his life amassing. He invites the ladies and gentlemen to feast their eyes on the Rouge Cube, the gem that is red in color. As the crate opens, the crowd is hit by a blinding flash of light. Nihim stands before the massive, glowing red crystal, and the crowd roars with excitement. An attendee murmurs that it is the real deal. Another guest stares in disbelief, realizing they are looking at actual color. Nihim tells the crowd to drink it in, calling the gem a little something from him to them. Arne calls out to the professor, asking if he is okay, and Avidia replies that he is almost through. Avidia kicks the door open. Avidia announces that he is in, and Arne tells him they are almost out of time, asking what he sees. He looks into the room to see a giant, complex weapon. He stares at the device and wonders just what kind of weapon it is. The crowd cheers as a massive color crystal is finally brought out. From a distance, Avidia observes a strange weapon, questioning what his foe is doing. His companion on the comms admits they can't yet figure out what their enemies are after. Avidia identifies the device as some sort of engine, noting it lacks a direct physical connection to the color red. He realizes with alarm that the device is already active. Warning Arne that it's about to shoot something at the venue, Avidia declares his intent to brute force the situation. Avidia fires his weapon at the machine. The device deploys mechanical legs and unleashes a powerful blast. In the auction hall, Nihim calmly observes that they have company. Nihim offers a cold apology, stating that his actions are for the sake of his ambition. The machine fires a powerful beam of energy downwards. The beam strikes the red crystal, engulfing the stage in light. A piercing screech fills the air as the red crystal cracks and transforms under the intense energy. High above, Avidia is overwhelmed by the deafening noise. Nihim incites the crowd, urging them to unleash their inner appetites. He commands them to offer themselves to their gods. The audience members begin to scream in agony. A horrified Arne turns to Kvedes, asking what is happening. Kvedes screams uncontrollably, affected by the light. Arne reports that everyone, including Kvedes, went crazy upon seeing the colored light. Over the comms, Avidia tells her he's coming as fast as he can and asks if she has her goggles on. Arne confirms that she does. The audience members turn on each other in a brutal frenzy. The hall descends into a scene of cannibalism. The chaos spreads as people are violently attacked. The horrific carnage continues throughout the hall. Kavedi seems to have lost all sense of himself. Arne tries to get his attention, calling out to him. The faces of the affected crowd members begin to glitch and distort. They are transformed into blank white-masked followers. Arne watches the transformation in horror. A voice announces the beginning of Stage 2, a thought-wave scripture chant. The newly formed cultists turn as one. The red crystal pulses with intense energy. The crystal begins to crack and break apart. Dosage appears, declaring the stage is set and wondering who will claim the gem. He challenges the monstrous guests to fight for it. The remaining monstrous guests turn their attention to the challenge. The frenzied horde